Chapter 431, Bounty License Sting. The system prompt sounded, first, to announce the condition Gufei had completed, successfully hunted 300 unique players as bounty targets. The second portion of this condition did not matter once one considered the total number of players in Parallel World. Even an avid bounty hunter like Gufei only encountered instances where he would coincidentally get the same target again while doing bounty mission very infrequently. Moreover, all of these occurred while he was in Yunjuan City. What followed second to the achievement descriptor was the special reward. He originally thought he would receive another equipment with the very cheesy name of Windchasers, but what he got this time was something new. He received a bounty license. This was not any equipment and could even be considered as a quest item, something specifically used for doing bounty mission. According to the item description, once he received a bounty mission, if he showed his bounty license to the NPC managing the bounty assignment hall, as the license holder, he would be able to view confidential information the average player was not privy of, which was of course only for personal use. He rummaged through his dimensional pocket and, sure enough, a hardcover book was in one of his empty slots. He took it out for a look. The black book's cover had bounty license written on it in silver font. Opening this book, he saw that its left page depicted an emblem, a thorny vine forming a braid. He found this emblem to be very familiar and quickly realized that it was the same image as that one on the door plaque of every bounty assignment hall. As for the page on the right, its first row had his license number, 1, the next row listed the license holder's name, 1000 Miles Drunk. Finally, the third row showed the person's job class, Mage. He vaguely understood what this was and felt as if he had become a VIP to the bounty assignment hall. He was awarded this certification as a form of encouragement. He was really curious as to what type of special treatment he would get for becoming a VIP. Waving this identification to the NPC present, he saw it nod to him, and indeed, he was given access to hidden information when he picked up the next bounty. What sort of hidden information was this? They were the names of the players and their job classes. Before Gufei's eyes, the wanted players list no longer just displayed serial numbers and park value. The player's name and job class followed after every serial number he saw, which delighted him to no end. The first thing that crossed his mind was using this to locate Southern Lone Blade. However, he soon got a little glassy-eyed after going through the list. PvP and PKs were not against the law in MMOs but were instead seen as a form of hobby people pursue for entertainment. Considering the tens of thousands of players in a city, there were at least thousands of slayers out there. Meanwhile, cities like Y City that were a little more unrestrained in this aspect had far more than that. Furthermore, Gufei currently had no idea if Southern Lone Blade and his crew had even registered inside the city, so just casually going through a few pages of the names in this city alone was overwhelming enough as it stood. Unfortunately, there was no way to change how the names on the list were sorted, as they were still listed from the highest park value to the lowest. If only there was a way to list it according to the players' names. Perhaps, there's a search function? He wondered. Since he could see the players' names, it would make sense that he could search for Southern Lone Blade's IGN and pick the bounty on his head. With this thought in mind, he inquired after this function to the NPC. At first, he was even worried that the NPC would not understand what he meant, but it unexpectedly understood his question perfectly and responded, "Your bounty license grade isn't high enough for that." He was stunned and finally made sense of things. It seemed that this was just the first level of VIP access he had earned, and that there were even higher levels and greater access he could strive for. He felt that this made sense, considering how the Windchaser's emblem leveled up after he had completed 200 bounty mission. This bounty license he had just acquired was probably similar and would level up again once he completed 600 unique bounty targets. This was obviously something Gufei could not accomplish overnight, and there was also no guarantee that the next upgrade of his accessibility would unlock the search function. He sighed and returned to the bounty board to slowly flip through the list of names manually. While this was a really dumb method, it was ultimately just a test of patience. The biggest worry was that the whole lot of them did not even have a park point on them. If that was the case, this would have been all for naught. What made him more worried was that while he was looking through the names with 2 park value, Southern Lone Blade would slay another player, causing his park value to increase by a point. which would also waste his effort. I can't possibly be that unlucky, can I? He thought to himself as he continued to look through the names. And so, Goofy stood in the bounty assignment hall like an idiot for over half an hour. He went through the entire list from start to finish once, yet none of the names of the 7 players in Southern Lone Blade's squad came up even once. Could they have not registered their characters here? He wondered. Sadly, the wanted players list in Xiaota City would not provide the names on Linshui City's fugitive board. The overall wanted players list. He turned his head and left the bounty assignment hall. He was well aware that searching for names on the overall wanted players list was entirely impossible, considering that there were over hundreds of thousands of players listed there. He hailed for the others on the mercenary channel. Royal God Call and War Without Wounds were currently getting the sisters, Slaras and Yenziazu, to be their guides in the city. They had the sisters bring them around the city to familiarize themselves with the surroundings. Of course, that was only an excuse, as the 2 men were only looking to extend the time they spent with the 2 ladies. Meanwhile, after Sword Demon came up with nothing when he scouted out all the spawn points, he began doing quests around the city, earning experience points as he continued to inquire after the whereabouts of Southern Lone Blade's gang. He truly lived up to his name as the most responsible and hard-working member of their mercenary group. On the other hand, Brother Assist had gone offline once he received instruction to gather more information and he had yet to return. Young Master Han was of course still drinking in that first tavern young Master's elite had been to. Goofy wondered just how young Master Han, who spent almost every waking moment in a tavern, was able to make the cut as one of the 10 great adepts of his job class. Was he really worthy of the title when put beside the other priests who worked to their bones healing for their parties? So how are things on your end? Any news on Southern Lone Blade? This person, who was idly sitting in the tavern, acted as if he were the boss. Goofy had not spoken or typed a word on their channel ever since he left that first tavern, yet the moment he sent out a message, young Master Han came hounding him to get to work. No new leads, Goofy replied. Silence. We're not even certain if they have registered their characters in Xiaota City. Goofy fumed. If they were able to ascertain that Southern Lone Blade had registered his account in this city, he felt that, just through the bounty license he had recently obtained, it would be a matter of time before he got a hold of Southern Lone Blade. They were a bunch of larcenists, so there was no way they would be able to escape from accruing park points. With how Goofy grinded on bounty mission on a daily basis, he would surely come across their names if he spent half an hour a day going through all the names. When did he meet up with Slaras? Young Master Han asked. Goofy had not asked Slaras this question, so they naturally had to inquire through Royal God Call and War Without Wounds, who were currently glued to the sisters. Slaras did not attempt to hide this information, telling them truthfully that it was at around 8:20. Southern Lone Blade squad reached the shore at 6:03, leaving at 6:09. We spent around an hour and 47 minutes walking from the shore to Xiaota City, so those guys are most likely more familiar with the route to the city than we are, allowing them to shave a bit of time. Sword Demon, how long does it take to get to the nearest spawn point from a city gate? Young Master Han asked. I'd say it's around 10 minutes. Sword Demon replied. With a departure time of 6:09, let's assume they only spent an hour and 40 minutes walking, putting them at Xiaota City at 7:49. That would give them 8 minutes to reach the spawn point and register their accounts, leaving just 20 minutes to meet Slaras in the tavern. The timing seems to be a little tight, young Master Han said. Did they or Slaras reach the tavern first? War Without Wounds and Royal God Call asked the ladies once more, reporting back. Slaras was in the tavern first. What time were they supposed to meet? How did they meet, and what time did they arrive at the tavern? When did they leave? Young Master Han gave them a series of questions to ask. Ask her yourself. War Without Wounds and Royal God Call were dejected. How would they successfully court these ladies if they were to interrogate the lady like this? Miles, you go, young Master Han ordered, acting like the boss once more. Why me? Goofy had no wish to do the job of jotting down a recorded statement. Because you're the one who wants to kill Southern Lone Blade and earn some money and not me, young Master Han replied. Goofy indeed had no choice, so all he could do was dash right over to the small tavern. Royal God Call and War Without Wounds had already prepared him writing materials and told Cyrus that he would be coming over to ask her a few things. Ahem. Even after meeting, Gouffet still felt a little uncomfortable. He sat down and cleared his throat before beginning. I'm just hoping to ask a few simple questions regarding Southern Lone Blade. Do I have the right to remain silent? Cyrus asked. You don't have to say a word if you prefer not to, Gouffet replied. Cyrus nodded, which Gouffet took as a sign for him to start. When did Southern Lone Blade suggest meeting up? 8. How did he arrange it? I happened to be in the tavern at that time, so I asked him to come over. What time did he reach? Gouffet asked. Around 8:20, I guess. When did he leave? 5 minutes, I think. Fuck. He slapped the table. Cyrus expressed her understanding of his frustration. And you arrived not 5 minutes after. That's right. He wanted to cry, yet no tears would come out. It turned out he was quite literally just a step behind Southern Lone Blade, and they almost bumped into each other. On the other end of the mercenary channel, young Master Han received the live broadcast of what was being said from Royal God Call, who was already making his assertions. Meeting Cyrus at 8, arriving 20 minutes later at the tavern. Judging from the time, it's very likely that he registered his account here in one of the spawn points. That's right, Gouffet agreed. However, registering their accounts doesn't mean that they'll stay in the city for long. It's entirely possible that they have left the city by now, young Master Han said. Left. When Gouffet heard this word, he suddenly recalled something and ran out of the tavern doors. The rest had no idea what was he doing, so they followed him as well. Gouffet looked down the left and right of the tavern, before turning to face War Without Wounds. Wounds, you came from this direction, right? Gouffet asked, pointing down the right lane. War Without Wounds nodded. Royal and I came from that way. Gouffet pointed to the left and asked Cyrus again. We didn't see anyone looking like Southern Lone Blade when we arrived. Does this street split off into anywhere? There are 2 street entrances. Cyrus pointed to the left and right. The left lane faces north, while the right heads south. Where does either lane lead to? He asked. The lane to the right connects to a normal alley, so I can't really say where they could have gone from there. As for the left lane, which is facing south, it leads directly to the Hall of Mercenaries. Gouffet immediately shoved Royal God Call. Head into that alley and inquire after Southern Lone Blade. Royal God Call immediately paled. Are you asking me to die? Gouffet was momentarily stunned before remembering that Royal God Call lacked any sense of direction. Sending him alone would be a fate worse than death to this man, so he nudged War Without Wounds as well. You two will go. The two clearly wanted to spend more time with the ladies whom they had not chatted enough, but upon being given a task to fulfill, they did not shirk from their responsibilities and immediately headed down the alley as instructed. Gouffet proceeded to thank Cyrus for her cooperation before hurrying down the left lane toward the Hall of Mercenaries. One out of these 2 lanes should be the path Southern Lone Blade squad has taken, so they might have left some traces behind, Gouffet thought to himself. Chapter 432, What is this word? Over by the city's Hall of Mercenaries, Southern Lone Blade's 7-man squad was glancing through the available player-submitted missions, mainly focusing on those looking for help in PvP matter or larceny-related jobs. Lucrative opportunities, like looting equipment off the video Mage, were few and far between. Southern Lone Blade and his crew would often do odds and ends to earn small sums of money, but what was more important for them was the accumulation of a client base. Southern Lone Blade's means of business started from these small jobs. By establishing a level of trust and contact with these clients, they would naturally think of hiring them again once a lucrative business opportunity appeared. Furthermore, he would add every client on his friends list through this back and forth of small businesses and would then carefully make records of every single transaction he had with them. This was essentially his leverage in maintaining a cordial relationship with the clients. While his larceny and murder practice had indeed drawn the masses' hatred, nobody should forget that behind every transaction he made, there must surely be an employer that sought his service. He was nothing more than a dagger, and the person holding the hilt should not be forgiven for their parts as well. He had sharpened his dagger to the point of it now being a double-edged knife, withholding his ability to take an eye for an eye. Every agreement with his employers acted as a reminder, I have leverage on you as well. This was how Southern Lone Blade gradually expanded his business network. Furthermore, the method to contact him for business was extremely rudimental, private messaging. As for those clients who were already in his friends list, Southern Lone Blade had never once rejected their job requests, and this was because he already had leverage on those people. He was convinced that each of them could betray anyone, except for him. These clients were his main source of income. But if he hoped for his business to prosper, it nationally meant that his client list would have to grow as much as possible. He had two methods to achieve this. First was for the major clients to introduce more customers to him, and second was essentially what he and his crew had been doing when he first started out, developing small customers into big clients before finally entering them into his friends list. This entire process was actually also a way for him to gain leverage. Standing in the Hall of Mercenaries right now, Southern Lone Blade's squad was searching for customers that had the potential to become large clients. With how their business had originally started out and slowly developed through this method, they were of course experienced at judging the potential of their would-be customers. Those missions with vague descriptions were often not requested by guilds or groups but by individuals. Instead, what was important here was pinpointing those who were rich. Poor players just did not have the necessary funds to become Southern Lone Blade's clients. The seven searched through the mission list, occasionally conversing with one another on the channel. As a group, situations where the members would have separate opinion regarding client selection still happened from time to time. At the moment, out of the seven, Southern Lone Blade, Flame Singed Clothes, and Blackwater working on a particular customer who was searching for a particular equipment, while Glue and the other priest had their eye on someone looking for help with a park target. Patty Scent Pastures and the Night Unrivaled Lucky Star were leaning toward a request for aid in a normal quest with a bountiful reward. Once they narrowed it down to these three targets, they noted their relevant information and then moved to leave. The seven did not directly accept the mission listed in the Hall of Mercenaries precisely because, as a non-mercenary group, they did not have permission to do so. The fog remained as thick as ever. The seven stepped out of the Hall of Mercenaries and inhaled a deep breath of fresh air, as though they had just turned a new lease of life. Let's begin, then. Southern Lone Blade took out the list of names that they had just jotted down and said, Blackwater, you and Flame will contact this mini Nectarinas, Patty and I will locate this Limp Hands, and the rest of you three can find this. This. God damn it, what is this word? Ha ha ha. You're so uncultured. Since they had finally escaped the hunt for their heads, each was feeling much more carefree and began to joke around with one another. Glue mocked Southern Lone Blade as he took the paper and had a look himself. His face turned green. Passing it along, the next person's face also turned green. Southern Lone Blade looked over to Flame Singed Clothes. Just what did you write? That was the name Flame Singed Clothes had jotted down. Flame Singed Clothes had no choice but to confess, I just copied the depicted character accordingly. It's a Martian word, even I don't know what the word is. What in the world is this word? Blackwater raised the paper in the air and squinted, as if hoping the sunlight would give him the ability to understand it. Finally, all seven shook their heads awkwardly. If none of them had any idea what word it was, then they had no means to enter it into their search field. Naturally, this meant they would be unable to find this player. Southern Lone Blade ended up stuffing that piece of paper back to Flame Singed Clothes. The three of you will search for many Nectarinas, the two of you will find someone who can read this Martian word. Before going their separate ways to contact their respective targets, the other two groups reveled in the misery of Flame Singed Clothes and Blackwater. It turned out that many Nectarinas and Limp Hands had set their friends list to private, a very common occurrence all in all, so the two groups left for the mailbox. This left just Blackwater and Flame Singed Clothes clutching onto that piece of paper as they kept examining the word. Forget about recognizing the word, even if we do know it, how are we going to enter this character into the search field? Flame Singed Clothes asked in frustration. How would I know? Blackwater was miffed as well. Guess we gotta inquire and find out. Flame Singed Clothes said. Look, there's a pretty lady over there. Blackwater pointed toward a certain direction. Aside from larceny, the seven-man squad was no different from the average gamer, and they had their interests as well. Given how plenty of players would partake in the courtship of the fairer sex, there was of course no lack of men with said interest among them. Starting off from that pretty lady, Flame-Cinched Clothes and Blackwater started walking down the road and pitifully asked the passers-by for assistance. In the end, not a player they met recognized the word on the paper. Quite a lot of those people threw them looks of contempt and disdain to boot. The two bore with this slide for the sake of the job, gritting their teeth as they continued to search for further information behind the word. They walked down a whole street, yet the two still had nothing to show for it besides being parched from all the questioning. "Let's head to a tavern and drink a round or two. There are more people congregated there, anyway, which makes it the perfect place to inquire further," Blackwater suggested. "That's true. Plus, I believe we need to find the right remedy to our problem. This word is far from common, so we need to ask people who are far from the mainstream." "It wasn't really smart of you to ask that old coot you approached moments ago," Flame-Cinched Clothes said. That old coot had no idea but pretended to be knowledgeable. "Forget about recognizing the word, he even claimed that it is an Oracle Bone Script 1, Blackwater agreed. "Can you even enter Oracle Bone Script characters in this game?" Flame-Cinched Clothes asked. "I've got no idea." Blackwater shook his head. The two continued on their merry way as they chatted, asking players that could possibly know more along the way yet finding nothing new. They were about to reach the tavern. They had not met another player for quite a stretch prior, and the street they were currently on was empty. The two foreigners, who were not used to having such thick fog covering their surroundings, felt uneasy as they traveled. "It's been quite some time since we last saw someone," Blackwater commented. "That's right." Flame-Cinched Clothes looked around in the fog. Finally, they saw a dark figure appear before them, which caused the two to become elated. "Oh, look, there's finally someone coming," Blackwater said. "Who cares who that guy is? Let's hurry and ask him," Flame-Cinched Clothes said. The two had not talked to anyone else for quite some time and were feeling rather lonely. They picked up their pace considerably. As the thick fog swiftly became less hazy, the two men could clearly make out the dark figure just ahead. Blackwater was clutching the paper and had half the mind to use his fleet foot to dash over to the man at first, but when the both parties' gazes met, the pair immediately came to a screeching halt. One side was surprised, while the other was delighted. Gouffet was extremely happy. He had only left the tavern for no more than a few steps. How could he so quickly bump into them? Did Southern Lone Blade actually leave behind such a huge trace of his presence at the tavern? However, the two men before him were not exactly who he was looking for. "Why are you here?" the two exclaimed in unison. They had been very careful along the way. Glue's eyes were strained from overexertion that they nearly became bloodshot, confidently assuring them that nobody was following them. After all, the spyglass could be considered as an item players did not know about, with not one of them being aware that such a thing existed in-game. Hee, what a coincidence. "Where's Southern Lone Blade?" Gouffet asked. Neither Flame-Cinched Clothes nor Blackwater made a sound, as they were busy sending out a message to inform the other members of their squad, that Cad is here. Southern Lone Blade felt like crying, yet no tears came out when he saw their message. The way he saw it, he had yet to do anything to Gouffet, so why was the man pestering them like so? "Can the two of you escape?" Southern Lone Blade had a pessimistic outlook to this encounter, directly using the word escape. "It would be difficult," Flame-Cinched Clothes replied. Ever since witnessing Gouffet's display of that 900-degree twin incineration by the banks of Linshui City, the squad had come to realize how frightening it was to go up against him. They were not even confident that the 7 of them combined would stand much of a chance to emerge victorious against the video mage. They would definitely have to employ some unorthodox trick if they hoped to win against the man. It was under such considerations that Southern Lone Blade finally decided to give up on the mission to loot Gouffet's equipment. This was because such targeted looting of equipment was often a job that took time and plenty of effort on their end. They would most likely have to kill Gouffet many times over, and each time would require intricate planning and ingenious arrangement. Southern Lone Blade did not think that he was much of a genius on this front, capable of winning by coming up with effective and different tactics each and every time. Weighing the pros and cons, he finally decided to just give up this mission. This was entirely due to the fact that it was too risky to go up against Gouffet. Rashly making an attempt on him would easily get themselves stuck, instead, so they might as well wipe the slate clean. But by the looks of things, it turned out that Gufei had already locked onto them and actually chased them all the way to this city. "Just what do you want from us?" Flame-Singed Clothes yelled angrily. Blackwater, who was standing at the side, was staring at Gufei silently. Flame-Singed Clothes had been so flustered that he actually used a cliché line from idol dramas even though the enemy was right before them and their level was at stake. It was truly quite embarrassing. Gufei seemed not to have noticed this, though, only asking calmly, "I'm looking for Southern Loneblade, where is he?" "Oh, he left for the West Gate," Flame-Singed Clothes casually replied. "Is that so?" Gufei chuckled. "Is it convenient for that guy to come over for a bit?" I don't think it's too convenient." Flame-Singed Clothes gave this answer. "How so?" "Because he doesn't wish to see you." "Would he rather see you two at a spawn point, then?" "I wonder if he prefers to head over to the Mage Academy or the Thieves' Union?" Gufei threatened the two with the potential loss of a level. Even though neither of them wished to die, they really had no choice on this matter. "Do whatever you like." Gufei drew his sword out, but the two had no intentions of dying without putting up a fight. Flame-Singed Clothes shoved Blackwater. "Run! I'll hold him off." When all was said and done, Blackwater was still a thief, and he still had the chance to escape from Gufei's evil clutches with his fleet foot. As for Flame-Singed Clothes. Chapter 433, The Effect of Repulsion. Gufei rushed up with his sword held aloft and closed the distance between the two parties in the blink of an eye. Flame-Singed Clothes hurriedly raised his magic staff and was about to start his incantation, but "Palatial Balefire, is it?" "I know." Gufei said this to him. Flame-Singed Clothes was a little dejected. He had only clashed against Gufei a handful of times, yet his routine had already been seen through easily. While it was nothing new, he still had to use the spell when the situation called for it. "Palatial Balefire, rise!" Flame-Singed Clothes yelled. The enemy was already expecting what he was about to cast, anyway, so there was no need to sub-vocalize it like what he would usually do. Yelling it loudly might just help increase the oral impact. When he finished the incantation, a wall of fire rose. However, Gufei was already in front of the spell, and was already pointing his sword at him in the next moment. Electric wall. Flame-Singed Clothes was in tears. It seemed that no one had brought anything fresh to this fight. He took a quick glance backward and saw that Blackwater's retreat had been cut off by that wall of electricity. The latter was now languidly staring back at him. "Come at me!" Flame-Singed Clothes bellowed as he lunged toward Gufei. He knew just how powerful the latter was as a mage. Gufei was definitely not an enemy that could be taken down conventionally, so he needed to deal with him through unconventional means. Unconventional means to a mage would naturally be a melee battle without using spells, so Flame-Singed Clothes rushed to Gufei while waving his fists, intending to fight with just his bare hands. Even the author had difficulty finding the words to describe Flame-Singed Clothes, and Gufei was instantly incensed when he saw the man run toward him while wildly swinging his arms like a madman. How could his punches and kicks be so unruly? Thus, he strode forward and used his usual routines to give Flame-Singed Clothes a thorough beating in 2 or 3 moves. Poor Flame-Singed Clothes was originally wildly swinging his arms when the fight started, but ended up having both arms in front of his chest to protect his face as best as he could. Even if taking such a beating would not kill him, it was still very painful. Gufei was annoyed by the fight as well, so he casually shoved Flame-Singed Clothes as his leg shot out to trip him at the same time. Leaving the man sprawled on the floor, he turned his attention to Blackwater as he ran over. The duration of his electric wall was not as long as Flame-Singed Clothes' Palatial Balefire, nor was his spell's cooldown as short as the latter's. As such, it was a race against time to take care of the thief. Blackwater knew he would not be a match for Gufei, so he did not bother to make a desperate attempt at fighting the latter at all. Flame-Singed Clothes was still lying on the ground, looking all bleak. Blackwater demonstrated his agile footwork as he ran about between the small space of Palatial Balefire and electric wall, determined not to let Gufei get anywhere near him. Gufei's movement speed was no match for Blackwater's, and it seemed as if he could do nothing about it, either. All he could do was patiently continue his chase after him. The running Blackwater suddenly felt exhilarated when he saw how worked up Gufei was getting, yet having no means by which to catch up. It seems this guy isn't that scary, after all. If only Glue is here, Then maybe we can kite him to death. Blackwater got excited when he thought of this, wondering if he had somehow stumbled upon a brilliant plan to take care of Goofy. It was in that moment, when the electric wall had disappeared in a flash, that Blackwater thought he finally found his way out. But Blackwater turned to look at flame-singed clothes. The man was motionlessly lying on the ground, as if he were a corpse. When Blackwater glanced over, the mage looked him in the eye and gave him a barely imperceptible nod towards the still raging wall of fire. "Do you want me to flee that way?" Blackwater was ready to make a run for it now that the electric wall was gone. He had been making sure to run near where the spell used to be. Just as he had the opportunity to make a break for it, he discovered that flame-singed clothes had been trying to communicate with him through eye contact. Blackwater did not really get what he meant at first, but he quickly realized that even though flame-singed clothes was still down on the ground, the magic staff he was holding was pointing in a certain direction. In that instant, Blackwater understood what the latter intended to do, and his heart leapt with joy as he ran toward the flaming wall. Goofy was still hot on Blackwater's heels and had no idea that flame-singed clothes, who was sprawled on the ground behind him, had already completed his spell incantation. Palatial balefire. Another row of flames surged from behind Goofy, and with it came the rambunctious laughter of Blackwater. This was Flame-Singed Clothes' plan. Blackwater would lure Goofy over and Flame-Singed Clothes would separate himself from the two with another palatial balefire, buying enough time for him to get away. Despite Goofy being in possession of the spell blink, it was apparent that the skill was either on cooldown or he did not have enough mana to cast it. Ultimately, would he run around after Blackwater as much as he did if he could use it? Although Blackwater was now trapped to one side with Goofy, the first palatial balefire Flame-Singed Clothes had placed was about to disappear, so Blackwater would only have to drag out the chase a little longer, and then he could break free with his superior movement speed. Given how thick the fog permeating the city, it was far easier to flee than to track anyone here. At this rate, the best case scenario would allow the two of them to safely get away from Goofy and certain death. "Bet you didn't think of this, huh, rascal?" Blackwater was laughing uproariously and enjoying the smug satisfaction he was feeling as he ran toward the first palatial balefire. Flame-Singed Clothes had already gotten up from the ground by this time and was snapping his fingers at Blackwater coolly. "Old Black, that wall of fire is gonna disappear in about 7 seconds, so ready yourself." "I'm taking my leave first." "Go on." Blackwater intentionally yelled out his reply before he teasingly turned to look at Goofy. Goofy was also looking at him, and he was even wearing the slightest of smile. This was not a smile that should appear on someone who was being made a monkey of, and Blackwater felt a little dazed by this as he heard Goofy say, "You're about to die soon, why are you still so happy?" "Die?" Blackwater laughed mirthlessly, refusing to take this threat seriously. Everything had been calculated clearly. There was no way Goofy would be able to catch up to him before that firewall disappeared. This person must really be stupid if he was still trying to bluff his way through such an obvious truth. Blackwater was quietly counting down the seconds. According to his calculations, the flames would extinguish in 2 seconds after he made it to the wall. He should have no difficulties holding things out since it was just 2 seconds. Blackwater turned his head backward as he dashed toward the wall of flames and saw Goofy closely chasing after him. "Maintain your distance. Don't panic, he can't catch up to you." Feeling a little flustered, Blackwater hurriedly reminded himself of the situation. The next thing he saw was Goofy reaching out his left hand toward him, a glaring electric glow clustered in that palm. "What is that thing?" This thought popped up in his head as that electric glow shot forth from Goofy's hand. Blackwater abruptly turned around and tried to block it by flurrying his dagger. A mage's spell could indeed be crushed by a well-placed physical attack, and even if the spell was not entirely disrupted, the disruption would at least be able to reduce part of the damage, and that would be preferable to taking it head-on. The electric glow shooting out brought about a faint crackling of lightning, which could be heard as Blackwater struck his dagger out with precision at the glowing cluster. He kept his eye on his HP the moment he made contact and saw it drop, though not by much. His defense was successful. Blackwater felt extremely gratified, but he soon realized that in the instant his attack dissipated that glowing cluster, it created an extremely strong repulsion that knocked Blackwater backward involuntarily. Indeed, He was going backward and had not been knocked off his feet. Blackwater's feet were still firmly planted on the ground, yet he was sliding backward as though he were wearing roller skates. "What's going on?" Blackwater blurted out, and then he became pale when he suddenly thought of something. He turned his head backward and saw the palatial balefire raging on behind him. If he continued to slide backward like this, he would come into direct contact with its flames. "Fuck, stop already!" Blackwater yelled. However, no matter how hard he tried, he just continued to slide backward without any signs of slowing down. Gufei, who had already stopped giving chase, watched the man before him panic and, whistling ever so softly, explained with a congenial smile, "Palmer Thunder has the repulsion effect." Blackwater gave up. No one could win a fight against the system's design. Any sort of effort he expended now to try and stop it would simply be futile. Blackwater did not wish to watch himself get pushed into the fire, so he did the only thing he could do: close his eyes. 0. Blackwater had finally finished the countdown in his mind. Opening his eyes, he saw that the fog was still prevalent, yet the street was no longer there, as he was now in the large courtyard of the Thieves' Union. Back on the street, Blackwater and that palatial balefire had completely disappeared together. Gufei turned around, walked toward the second wall of fire and gazed across the divide. Flame-singed Clothes, who was in the middle of fleeing, came to a halt and faced backward to stare at the murky black figure that was standing behind the flames. "It's real foggy over there, did you see what happened?" Gufei shouted. Flame-singed Clothes did not say a word. "Your friend was far too careless, he actually dashed into your wall of fire," Gufei continued. Flame-singed Clothes did not respond again. He knew that Blackwater was not the type to be so careless, so he was positive Gufei had done something to him. But this fact was confirmed because he suddenly received a system prompt informing him that his park value had increased by 1 point. In that moment, he had a fleeting wish that this park point was Gufei himself, but he could unfortunately hear his voice before he even turned his head over. Flame-singed Clothes wished he could tear Gufei into 8 pieces right now, but he was well aware that he would end up sprawled on the ground once more. So he gritted his teeth and turned to disappear into the fog. "Hee hee. Do you think you can escape from me just like that? It's no use. Now that I am a VIP of the Bounty Assignment Hall, I can easily uncover your whereabouts." Gufei picked out his bounty license, admired it for a while, and then dashed toward the Bounty Assignment Hall. 1 park point would automatically erase itself after 2 hours. Gufei believed Flame-singed Clothes would not have a sudden epiphany and turn himself in. Even if he intended to clear this 1 park point, there would be no way he would be able to reach the hall before the all-agility mage Gufei could. Gufei soon reached the Bounty Assignment Hall, and he flashed his bounty license over to the NPC before starting his search through the available bounty targets. Flame-singed Clothes had just earned himself the point not too long ago, so Gufei simply flipped to the last page and searched. If his name was not listed, then that proved that the whole lot of them had not registered their accounts here in Xiao City. Thankfully, Gufei managed to spot Flame-singed Clothes' name on the second to last page. He made sure that the latter's job class was Mage first before he picked it up without a moment of hesitation. Gufei quickly announced the coordinates of his bounty target on the mercenary channel. "What's that?" everybody asked. "Flame-singed Clothes coordinates," he answered. "How did you get that?" "You've already killed him, so what's the point of giving us his coordinates?" everybody asked. "Southern Lone Blade is my ultimate target. Flame-singed Clothes is now acting as my eyes," he explained. "You managed to make him defect?" Everyone found that to be implausible. Gufei's strong suit was his ability to exert physical harm. Could it be that this man was also an expert when it came to hypnosis? Thus, Gufei educated the lot by introducing them to the bounty license and telling them how he managed to make Flame-singed Clothes earn himself 1 park point. Southern Lone Blade is really doomed this time around. All of them sighed. Chapter 434, The Aura of an Expert. Believing he had escaped from the lion's den, Flame-singed Clothes was in low spirits right now. Even though Blackwater did not intend on blaming him for his death, Flame-singed Clothes was still sorry for what had happened. Blackwater originally had a chance to escape, but in order to grant Flame-singed Clothes a chance to flee as well, he stayed to buy him time and ended up dying to his palatial balefire. Instead, Flame-singed Clothes thoroughly blamed himself for this. However, as they were comrades, An apology must be expressed through their actions. Words of apology would only sound hypocritical. That guy is just too diabolical. Flame-cinched clothes ran through the fog as he complained to his squad mates. Why is he here, too? Could he have been chasing us all this while? Southern Lone Blade simply could not make sense of this issue. That's impossible. Nobody was on our tail the entire way here, so how would they even know we've gone to Xiao City? Glue was nonplussed as well. Could we have a traitor in our midst? Southern Lone Blade was used to this life of treachery, making it a habit to be cautious and always consider the worst scenario of things. Since he could not make sense of how their whereabouts were leaked, this possibility involuntarily flitted through his mind. However, he quickly dismissed this notion. The 7 of them had not known each other for a mere handful of days. There was no way they would have stuck around until today if any of them had meant to betray the squad. Besides, the rock-solid leverage Southern Lone Blade held with their clients also tied down the others. It was as the saying went, a man may betray others, but he will at least be loyal to himself. Their relationship had already gotten to the point where they shared weal and woe together, so it was simply impossible for any of them to become a turncoat. I can guarantee that no player has been on our tail throughout our journey. Glue expressed this resolutely, dispelling everybody's doubts about this possibility. That means there's only one possibility, Southern Lone Blade said. What is it? Among the people we met in Xiao City, someone, who was friendly with those guys, happened to recognize us, he answered. It's not strange for a person or two to be friends with them, but won't it be too much of a stretch for that said person to recognize us? Not many people in Linshui City could recognize us, so how could there be someone that would identify us here? Glue expressed his doubts. Southern Lone Blade thought about this for quite a while, asking Flame-cinched clothes, Singed, have you lost him? Yeah. That wall of flame held him back, and with how foggy this place is, it's really easy to safely get away, Flame-cinched clothes replied confidently. His confidence was not exactly unfounded, but it was just unfortunate that they were unaware of the existence of an item, bounty license. Facing off against young Master's elite, Southern Lone Blade's squad had time and again fallen to those items they were unaware of the existence. They suffered heavy losses, yet had no idea of what had caused their failure. Let's not panic, everyone, Southern Lone Blade said. This city is still great for hiding. Everybody can only make out of one another when they are no more than 30 meters apart. Nobody can see even a shadow of a figure 40 meters over, so I doubt he can locate us easily. All of them nodded in agreement. Still, I really can't take this lying down. Let's think of a way to slay that man. Flame-cinched clothes was still pissed. We'll get our chance, Southern Lone Blade consoled Flame-cinched clothes. With how arrogant that guy is, it's just a matter of time before we receive a request to take him down. We'll properly take care of him when that time comes, essentially allowing us to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Flame-cinched clothes sighed. He could not help but admit that Southern Lone Blade lived up to his name as the leader of this squad. He had the most forbearance out of them 7. Blackwater, how are things on your end? Anything out of the ordinary? Southern Lone Blade asked. I have yet to find anything strange. The experienced Blackwater was in no hurry to charge out of the Thieves' Union, calmly using stealth to carefully make his way out of the large courtyard. He had been observing his surroundings in a corner this whole time and did not see anyone acting suspicious. Unless the opponent had also sent a stealth thief, then he firmly believed there was no ambushing troop waiting for him outside. Don't be in a hurry to leave. Stay around and monitor the place once more, Southern Lone Blade said. Got it. Blackwater nodded. Currently, the biggest regret this 7-man squad had was their inability to detect stealth thieves. There were rumors that the video Mage had equipment that could detect a player in stealth. This man was truly a pinata of loot. However, the 7 of them had enough on their plate just trying to hide from him. They truly no longer wished to make a play for any of the equipment he possessed. What was more, they heard that one of the X5 unyielding experts, Deepwater, also had ways to counter stealth, but it was apparently a skill he possessed. Skills could not be dropped no matter how hard they tried, so none of them made any plans to target Deepwaters. So, what do we do now? Glue asked. Pretend he doesn't exist and continue what we are currently doing, Southern Lone Blade answered. Have you gotten a reply from any Nectarinas yet? Nope, Glue replied. Southern Lone Blade had not gotten word on his end, either, and just as he was about to say something, Patty St. Pastures suddenly yelled, "We've got mail." Limp hands? Yup. Patty St. Pastures retrieved the letter from the mailbox and quickly skimmed through it. They had only given a simple explanation of their intention when they first made contact, and this person had just set their friends list back to public and was asking them to throw a friend request over to discuss the matter in greater detail. Southern Lone Blade would be the one doing the negotiations from here on. This was also part of the practice that the 7 of them had intentionally set up. After all, Southern Lone Blade was a well-known IGN in Parallel World. His presence would be a pleasant surprise, inexplicably increasing the measure of trust the other party had toward them, possibly even overwhelming them to the point of flattery. This person by the name of Limp Hands was exactly this sort, quickly returning a friend invitation the moment he saw that Southern Lone Blade's name was sent to his. Before he could indicate that he was from the party who had just contacted the man, the latter already sent him a greeting. Southern Lone Blade smiled. He had experienced such situations once or twice before, so he was not really taken aback by such admiration. All he knew was that their business would develop even more smoothly when facing such players. Just as he had expected, once Southern Lone Blade explained his purpose for adding him, Limp Hands was positively overwhelmed by the honor. To think one of the 5 unyielding experts would actually pick up a quest from a nobody like me. Come to think of it, I had only placed that mission not too long ago. Truly, the discerning eyes of an expert could easily distinguish the wheat from chaff, allowing my quest to attract such an expert in such a short span of time. Limp Hands was currently blowing his horn as he reimagined himself to such an extent. He finally asked a more appropriate question when he was done. Aren't you based in Linshui City? Why would you suddenly appear here in Zai'u City? Hee, it's nothing. I am just traveling out and about since I've got nothing to do. Southern Lone Blade casually warded off that question. With the aura of an expert working in his favor, Limp Hands seemed to have taken what he said like words spoken from a god. Southern Lone Blade could not help but wonder what Limp Hands would instead be thinking if the latter knew that he had absconded from Zai'u City after being hunted to the point where he could not carry on living in Linshui City. The ensuing negotiations that took place was pretty much a breeze. As to why the squad had not directly accepted the mission from the Hall of Mercenaries, Southern Lone Blade directly told him that they were not a mercenary group, so they were unable to do so. It would also have been an acceptable reason if he said that it was to avoid the system from taking a cut from their profits, but such an answer would sound extremely miserly and was rather detrimental to their image. Both parties agreed to meet face to face over by the North Gate. Afterward, Limp Hands was looking for players to help him complete the quest. He had not listed the name of the quest over by the Hall of Mercenaries, merely stating that it was a normal quest and attached an impressive payout to it. This was the main reason that had attracted Southern Lone Blade and his squad's attention. If this employer was willing to pay such an exorbitant price to a normal quest, it would truly be a gross negligence on their part not to develop such a sucker into a potential client. Everybody, gather by the North Gate. Blackwater, you come, too. Southern Lone Blade told everyone. This was another one of their practices. The first time they came into contact with a client, they would all turn out in a show of force in order to make a deep impression to the other party. The 7-man squad began gathering, yet they were unaware that every member of Young Master's elite was already closing in on Flame-Singed Clothes thanks to Goofy's minutely update of coordinates from his bounty mission. Brother Assist had also logged back on by this time, dejectedly reporting that he had not found anything. He immediately yelled to take a look at Goofy's bounty license the moment he was filled in on the current situation. Home in on Flame-Singed Clothes, and it will be a matter of time till we meet up. Goofy sent Flame-Singed Clothes coordinates over to Brother Assist. The two parties began moving about in the thick fog that permeated every part of Zai'u City. Southern Lone Blade's squad was the first to gather, and they were finally face to face with the player that could be their future god of fortune, Limp Hands. This person was also a warrior. His eyes sparkled and became starstruck when he saw the legendary expert, Southern Lone Blade. Southern Lone Blade presented himself as an easygoing and generous person, patting Limp Hands on his back as he asked, "Why don't you fill us in about this quest of yours?" In the end, It was Limp Hands that chuckled secretively. Actually, it's not a quest. It's actually a boss. I happened to stumble across one, but I didn't have the strength to take it down myself. Oh. Southern Lone Blade commented. He managed to keep his composure and not display any signs of excitement, unlike how an average player would react when they heard the word boss. The other 6 players accompanying him were equally calm. Limp Hands was actually observing the expression of these 7 men. He had a little blind faith and devotion to Apex experts, as if those who reached a high level would also be upstanding characters. It was akin to the belief that students with good grades would behave well in school. The moment when the 7 men heard the word boss and remained calm, Limp Hands abandoned the last bit of doubts he had in him. He was now convinced that this squad led by Southern Lone Blade would not attempt any dirty tricks for the sake of fortune. In truth, the 7 men present had already trained themselves in this aspect to the point where they reacted far different from the average gamer. Harboring evil thoughts at the sight of riches? There were not even any riches present right now, so what use was there to harbor such thoughts? That would be far too inferior a mindset to hold on to. It was better for them to wait and see what the boss would drop before they revealed their true selves. If it was something that they were in urgent need of, like a skill or equipment that could counter stealth, they would not hesitate to act upon those evil thoughts. Limp Hands was not yet a full-fledged client of Southern Lone Blade, so there was no need for the squad to talk about honor with the man. Poor Limp Hands, however, was unaware that he was already the sheep in the jaws of a tiger one, obediently leading the 7 men on a journey to hunt down a boss. At the same time, Gufei and the rest of Young Master's elite were also converging in this direction. However, due to the difference in their respective movement speed, the difference in distance was still rather substantial. Meanwhile, young Master Han noticed the changes in the recent few coordinates of Flame-Singed Clothes and realized they probably finished assembling since Flame-Singed Clothes movement became slower. The only reason anyone would purposely reduce their pace when moving as a party was to match the speed of someone slower. Plus, this change in speed is rather significant, the information analysis maniac, Brother Assist, said after a brief calculation. This speed he is now going at seems to be the movement speed of a level 35 or lower warrior or mage, who isn't wearing a good footwear. Just what are those guys doing hanging around a noob like that? All the experts in Young Master's Elite found this to be incomprehensible. Chapter 435, Shadow Mist Assassin. The fog on the outskirts of Xiao City seemed to be far thicker than what was found within it, reducing vision by yet another step and making it only possible for players to clearly discern others within 25 meters from themselves. Anything beyond that 25 meters would just be a blur, and everything after 30 meters would just be the impregnable fog. This weather condition meant that what had happened to Limp Hands had a high possibility of occurring, as players would have to at least be within 25 meters of a monster to confirm whether it was just a regular one or a boss. Plenty of players would think of a boss as just a normal monster if they saw it beyond 25 meters, and this was precisely why the location of this boss Limp Hands had come across was not a secret. Due to the heavy fog serving as cover, other players were inadvertently unable to get within 25 meters of distance of it. Limp Hands, who had the boss's coordinates, was currently taking the lead as he revealed every detail of said boss to Southern Lone Blade and his crew. Shadow Mist Assassin Andrusu. From the name alone, anybody could tell that its job class was the Thief's job class advancement of Assassin. Limp Hands had looked for information about this boss, with the official information statement mentioning that it was a boss that got lost and was now trapped in the thick fog of Xiao City, making this Shadow Mist Assassin to be a boss unique to the region. The official information did not reveal anything about its strength, level, or skills, and even though Limp Hands had stumbled on it and even fought against it, he was still uncertain as to its true strength. It simply circled around behind me and killed me with a stab, Limp Hands said with great remorse. This was a common mistake that noobs made, becoming at a loss in their excitement when they came across a boss. Audaciously attempting to challenge it alone would naturally result in such a tragic outcome. Southern Lone Blade heard this and nodded his head silently, before finally saying, "A boss that could attack you from behind before you could react means this boss possesses an extremely fast movement speed." That's right, that's right. Limp Hands nodded his head vigorously, admiring Southern Lone Blade endlessly. "You're a warrior, too, to say the very least, so its damage output must be significant for it to kill you with one stab. However, attacking from behind like that can very well be a skill that is similar to backstab, and the assassin job class will see a further increase to their damage from backstab and have a chance of ignoring defense. Even though the enemy is a NPC, it will still have to respect the job class design. Furthermore, the system very likely gave this boss high skill proficiency. The potential direct damage it can deal may not be that scary just based off this attack from behind insta-killing you. Southern Lone Blade continued to give a thorough analysis of the matter, as Limp Hands unabatingly submitted to his words. There was another thought that came to Southern Lone Blade, which he did not say aloud. Since it's an assassin, there's a higher chance of the skills and equipment that drop from it to be related to the job class. Could it be that even the heavens are helping us and are about to gift us something that counters stealth? Limp Hands began to have more and more faith towards Southern Lone Blade's 7-man squad, while the 7 men had other thoughts in mind, not revealing the slightest hint of them as they continued to forge ahead. However, due to Limp Hands' movement speed dragging down their speed as a whole, some members of Young Master's elite were already able to gain ground on them. Gufei and Sword Demon were much faster than the rest and had already encountered one another. They were well aware that Southern Lone Blade and the others would be not too far ahead and would likely be visible if they hurried along. Royal Godcall also possessed fast movement speed, but unfortunately he simply did not dare to venture ahead by himself. All he could do was slowly follow behind Warrior Without Wounds, building up frustration and resentment within him that he had nowhere to vent. As for young Master Han, he was actually the closest to the north gate from the tavern he had parked himself in, so he was not too far behind the rest even though he had slow movement speed. Brother Assist hurried from the spawn point after logging on, so the two were now traveling together after he caught sight of young Master Han. Should I just attack? Gufei was already raring to take them on since he was currently the closest to the 7-man squad, wishing he could immediately begin the bloodshed. Fuck, you're not allowed to. If you attack right now, won't that mean that we have all hurried over for nothing? Royal Godcall and War Without Wounds voiced their vehement opposition to this. It was not because they were worried that Gufei might not have the ability to clean the targets up, but rather that they were too confident in his strength that they were convinced he would be able to slay all 7 enemies once he attacked, which meant that they had hastily traveled all this way for naught. This sort of thinking was rather contrarian, since they were not worried for the safety of their comrade but was, in fact, entirely unconcerned. Gufei had no choice. You guys hurry up, then. Damn it. If it weren't for this wastrel wounds moving so slowly, I would already reach the destination. Royal Godcall raged. Any more bullshit out of you and I'll just abandon you. War Without Wounds was angered as well. Royal Godcall did not dare to say another word. If War Without Wounds truly abandoned him in this heavy fog, he would probably become the lost sharpshooter that had become trapped in the thick fog of Xiaoyu City. Don't be in a hurry to attack. Find out what these guys are really doing first. Young Master Han spoke up, providing a much better reasoning than what Royal Godcall and War Without Wounds had raised. Just who is that guy together with them? Brother Assist was sure of his calculations that the 7-man squad was currently traveling with an 8th player. We'll expose ourselves if we get any closer, Gufei reasoned. Sword Demon agreed with this assessment because they could already hear the squad chatting just right ahead. Southern Lone Blade and his crew were more conscious of keeping a low profile, but Limp Hands was the exact opposite, talking and laughing in a carefree manner. Gufei did not even have to depend on flame-cinched close coordinates any longer. He was certain he would not go wrong just following that man's voice. This reminded Gufei and Sword Demon not to converse leisurely, for they were already within earshot of the other party. Even though the two of them were walking side by side, they were communicating with each other through messages. Finally, several hazy figures appeared before them due to Southern Lone Blade and the lot suddenly coming into a halt. Gufei and Sword Demon swiftly came to a stop as well, even as they backed away a few more steps to hide themselves in the heavy fog. In the next moment, they heard that voice that had been talking all the way here announce, "It should be around here. Everyone, be careful." Gufei and Sword Demon could hear Southern Lone Blade's voice. The 7 did not disperse and, instead, formed a circle with their backs to one another, with that limp hands person standing in the middle. On the one hand, they were doing this to prevent Shadow Mist assassin Andrew Sue from sneak attacking them from behind. On the other hand, they were doing this to put Limp Hand's mind at ease by protecting him from within. They appear to be searching for something. It could very well be a boss. Sword Demon sent out this message across the mercenary channel. He was a MMO veteran, after all, so he was quicker than Goofy to draw this conclusion. Boss! Everyone exclaimed. They might be a group of top-class experts, yet they were not even in the least bit able to keep their calm like Southern Lone Blade and his crew when they heard the word boss. Can't you go any fucking faster? Royal God Call scolded Warrior Without Wounds. Fucking lousy, slow-ass warrior, what sort of movement speed is this? War Without Wounds was currently showing the full extent of his scorn at his beloved job class for the sake of this boss. Take care, they might suddenly rush over and discover us, Goofy messaged Sword Demon. I know, Sword Demon replied. When Goofy turned around, Sword Demon was already nowhere to be seen. Motherfucker. Goofy could not help but cuss to himself. Sword Demon had already activated his stealth, but Goofy was now having a bit of trouble himself, as nobody could see each other in this heavy fog. Goofy could not sense any killing intent in this sort of setting, and flame-cinched clothes minutely coordinates update would not be enough during such a time when every second counted. Say something. Say anything. Don't you have plenty to say? He kept urging in his mind, puzzled why Limp Hands would suddenly stay quiet at this time. Limp Hands would obviously stay quiet. Why would he dare to disrupt everybody's concentration, given the tense situation they were in? Enfolded within their circle, he did not even dare to exhale too loudly as he nervously looked all around. Just as Goofy was at a loss on what to do, Sword Demon sent him this message: head over to this set of coordinates. This was when Goofy realized Sword Demon had actually boldly left the cover of the heavy fog and was now directly observing their movements. Since he was able to see their every movement, it only made sense for him to be able to give him the necessary directions. Goofy glanced at the coordinates he was given and moved accordingly as per instructed, as a vague sense of impatience nipped at his heart. He had no love toward the boss, and all he wished now was to directly charge at the 7 men and happily slay them where they stood. However, sometimes, it was important to be considerate of others' feelings. Goofy knew that these MMO fanatics would consider killing a boss to be far more important than eliminating a hated enemy, since a boss would have a far better chance of dropping good loot than players. They must be looking for a boss. Now that Sword Demon was directly watching their every move, he was even more certain of the conclusion he had arrived at earlier. This statement only served to stoke the anxiety in both War Without Wounds and Royal God Call, while the latter wished he could just whip the former like a horse to make him move faster. Young Master Han and Brother Assist were far more composed in comparison, even as they continued to hurry at a measured pace. Brother Assist flipped through his information booklet for any information regarding the bosses in Zyota City and discovered that the information he had collected for this region was pathetically sparse, all thanks to the heavy fog that was a permanent fixture to the area. Sword Demon continued to observe the squad's movement as he looked around anxiously. He was eager to find out where the boss could be as well. Over there, Sword Demon suddenly spotted a dark shadow flit by in the corner of his eyes, and he abruptly turned his head over, but it had already disappeared. Southern Lone Blade and the rest were covering a 360-degree of vision, so there was even less reason for them to miss this flash of movement. Over there! The 3 players that had their eyes fixed in that direction yelled out in unison. The 7 men maintained their formation as they moved over, the scenery changing as the fog slowly unveiled in tandem, but that shadow that they had spotted was already gone. Pay more attention, Southern Lone Blade said, and the 6 men nodded. They did not seem to be in the least bit anxious and just calmly watched their surroundings. Sword Demon had to give credit where it was due. Just from their disposition alone, the squad was definitely a real team of experts. Hey, while you guys are spouting all this rubbish, I'd like to remind you that you've not given us an update on your last coordinates for quite some time now, young Master Han remarked on the mercenary channel. Oh. Sword Demon hurriedly reported his coordinates. Accordingly, it was now his task to do this, since he had a clear line of sight of their target. Brother Assist and I have arrived, young Master Han answered. Fuck me, even young Master reached the place. Go to hell, you. Royal God Call chastised a war without wounds once more. He was nearer. War without wounds was really helpless. What's the sitrep? Young Master Han asked. Southern Lone Blade and the rest are walking around this set of coordinates. A shadow of someone with really high movement speed flashed by just now. That should be the boss, Sword Demon said. So, we can more or less conclude that a boss is here? Young Master Han asked. Yup. Sword Demon nodded. For anything to have such high movement speed, it should either be a boss or a GM. That's good enough, then. Miles, attack. Young Master Han said. How truly despicable. Gu Fei sighed. Kill all the witnesses. Now that we've figured out the location of the boss before turning our attention to the boss and hunting it at our leisure, how can this man be so villainous? Gu Fei thought of this but was not really burdened by it. He had been waiting for a long time to act. Swinging his moonlit nightfalls, he got ready to dash out. Suddenly, he felt a light breeze from behind him, and the extremely nimble and responsive him instantly turned round and spotted a gray figure standing right behind him. Without even thinking, Gu Fei met that gray figure with his sword, which he firmly gripped in his outstretched arms. A huge force connected with his blade, and he was abruptly sent flying. Chapter 436, In and Out of the Fog. The system boss had always belonged to the masses and was never something owned solely by any individual. That was why even though Southern Lone Blade and his squad purposely came over here for this boss, and Gu Fei and his fellow mercenaries rushed over in hopes of slaying Southern Lone Blade, that did little to affect the boss from targeting Gu Fei first. Everybody was searching around the place blindly. Southern Lone Blade and the others had their backs stuck fast and formed an enclosed circle, while Sword Demon maintained his stealth. Only Gu Fei was arrogantly standing in the fog. If the boss did not choose to target him, it would truly be a joke for the officials who had boasted of their complex AI algorithm for this game. NPCs would not produce killing intent when they attacked, and this was why the Shadow Mist Assassin had been able to sneak behind Gu Fei and strike like it did without him realizing anything. As an assassin, it was exceptionally skilled at hiding its presence. The boss did not even make a sound despite its high movement speed. However, it was also due to this fast movement speed that a flaw was created. It was the flow of air that accompanied a high-speed movement, which was colloquially known as wind. Perhaps, the average gamer would not have noticed such a slight breeze, but Gu Fei, who was more attentive to this sort of aberration, was able to nimbly turn around and block the boss's blow with keen acuity. Against Gu Fei, an NPC that would not give off killing intent would have an innate advantage when ambushing. Slowly making its way to the target's back and stabbing the person from behind would be far more effective for the boss than making such a lightning blitz. Unfortunately, the person who designed this NPC had never thought of this. The instant the Shadow Mist Assassin attacked, it quickly turned around and dashed into the fog once more. Gu Fei might have blocked that stab from the boss, but he was entirely unable to resolve the ensuing force that came with it. The blow sent him hurtling through the air, becoming a hazy black blur as he flew in the fog. There! 3 of the 7-man squad, who had their eyes trained on where Gu Fei had been, exclaimed, causing everybody to turn their heads over. Sure enough, they saw a figure streak out of the fog, appearing as if it was flying instead of running. Take care! Southern Lone Blade shouted as their circle of 7 turned to let him take the brunt of the blow from this black figure. The knight in their squad bestowed blessing of resilience as the 2 priests got ready to begin healing. Southern Lone Blade held his shield before him, hoping to use this opportunity to find out just how much damage this Shadow Mist Assassin could deal. As it turned out, this flying black figure did not come hurtling straight toward them and, instead, landed on the ground halfway to them. No matter how they looked, it did not seem that it was about to elegantly dash over and attack them, because this person's butt was facing Southern Lone Blade and the others. This person stepped back for plenty of steps before finally finding firm purchase on the ground. He turned over and waved at the audience. Don't panic, it's just me. Fuck! The 7 men bellowed. At the same time, Glue's arrow and flame-singed clothes spell came flying toward him. Gu Fei darted to the side in response. Blackwater wanted to bolt out and contend with a man, but Southern Lone Blade stopped him. Don't mess up the formation. Limp Hands, who was standing in the core of these 7 men, hurriedly shouted, he's not the boss. The boss doesn't look like that. Southern Lone Blade did not even turn as he said, he's not the boss. He's even stronger than a boss. Limp Hands was perplexed. He could not understand what Southern Lone Blade meant by what he said. This person, decked out in a black mage robe yet holding a sword, was standing before them while grinning. This man had just very deftly dodged the incoming arrow and spell. This was when Limp Hands realized that this was not a boss but a freak. Instead, a boss would at least follow the rules and framework that came with a job class, but just what sort of crazy mess of a character was this person before them? Glue and Flame Singed Clothes attacks would naturally not stop with that one wave, as more of their arrows and spells followed. However, Gufei was extremely calm when he faced the two's joint assault, casually wielding his sword to manage the situation. When faced against Flame Singed Clothes AO spells, he would proceed to run forward, getting himself closer and closer to that circle of 7 men. Tighten up! Southern Lone Blade suddenly commanded when he recalled that Gufei was able to blink. None of them would survive if Gufei blinked right into their midst and executed that 900-degree twin incineration on them. Even if he possessed high HP, him being able to dish out a 900-degree attack would translate to 2.5 revolutions, meaning, half of them would take 3 slashes from his twin incineration. Was there anyone alive that could actually tank through all that damage? All of them understood this tacitly, immediately stepping back. They tightened up the formation they had. It was mainly Glue and Flame Singed Clothes that were dishing out attacks, so all they needed to do was ensure that the two had ample space to do their work. Thus, the circle shrank until Limp Hands found it hard to breathe from being squeezed at the center. Southern Lone Blade turned to look him in the eye. Hang in there. The eyes of Limp Hands revealed his perseverance as he nodded his head resolutely. He felt that this was the moment for him to undergo his personal trials. Gufei came to a grinding halt the moment he saw his enemies move. He had indeed originally intended to close in on them, blink right into their midst, and then follow that up with twin incineration to clear them all out. However, he had not expected for his plan to be seen through and be acted upon by squeezing out any potential space between them for him to exploit. Now, all he could do was kill them off one by one from the outside. Gufei was about to get started when he heard someone shout, "Behind you!" Gufei was startled. He deduced that the Shadow Mist assassin had probably made its way to his back once more, and this shout was definitely from Sword Demon warning him as the latter kept watch. Gufei turned his body, and sure enough, that gray shadow came sprinting out of the fog, looking to stab him right in the back again. With this backward look, Gufei could easily tell that the Shadow Mist assassin's movement speed far outstripped Svelte Dancer's. There was no doubt it was a downright formidable boss. Gufei hurriedly moved several paces to the side, but the Shadow Mist assassin was already right before him, driving its mad gray dagger right toward him in a hazy blur. Gufei was ready for this, though. It was not difficult for him to parry this attack, and it seemed that the boss did not use as much strength and force in this plunge like before. It instantly retracted its arm after its attack and did a flip in the air, extending its arm out as it trained a flurry of blows. Any average player would see just a mess of attacks, but Gufei's eyesight was far from the average. He was able to distinguish each stab the boss made as he matched these attacks with a nimble twist of his wrist. Sparks bloomed and danced as they exchanged strikes, the sound of clanking metal ringing repeatedly as the boss's attack was completely sealed. While Gufei did not attack as quickly as the Shadow Mist assassin, his technique was far more consummate. The placement of every thrust of his sword was adjusted for the cleanest execution. Generally speaking, the Shadow Mist assassin had a faster attack speed, but its margin of error was large as well. Meanwhile, Gufei might be slower in his attack speed, but he exercised pinpoint precision. As a result, there was hardly any differences in the time it took for either party to initiate their attacks, leaving either side evenly matched. In truth, Gufei did have a method to penetrate through the enemy's attack with one strike, but the problem was that he was dealing with a boss and not an actual human being. Against a player, a slash to the throat would be all it took to send that person back to the spawn point, but against a boss, there was simply no way for him to insta-kill a boss no matter where his sword slashed. Furthermore, a NPC would not back down after taking an attack, which meant that Gufei would only end up dead at the hands of the ensuing rain of dagger strikes the boss would dish out. As a result, he had no choice but to honestly fend off its every blow. As far as methods went, directly clashing in such a fashion was an inferior option, Yet those who were unfamiliar with the world of martial arts found such a display extremely exciting. Either party continued to trade blows through the countless exchanges they made as their weapons danced against each other. Suddenly, the Shadow Mist assassin halted his attack, as some unknown strength, seemingly plucked from the thin air, came to it, making it tumbled back into the fog. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. Despite the short exchange, he had expended a great amount of energy dealing with the boss. His left hand flicked and batted away an arrow to the ground that was heading straight for his right shoulder. He turned around to face the 7 men once more. When Gu Fei was being attacked by the Shadow Mist assassin, flame-singed clothes and glue had also wished to continue their ranged attack at him, but they were stopped by Southern Lone Blade. He was worried that this attack might redirect the boss's aggro, sending the Shadow Mist assassin straight to them when it was originally targeting Gu Fei. Having to contend with Gu Fei was already a frightening prospect by itself. Would they not just be voluntarily seeking death if they pulled the boss's aggro, as well? The others also felt that this was a rather logical assessment, so flame-singed clothes ended up sending little fireballs, while glue fired off homing projectiles. These were attacks that had low damage yet were virtually unmissable, so there was no chance for them to accidentally hit the boss, allowing them to harass Gu Fei and lend the boss a hand. But who would have thought that Gu Fei would completely ignore them, concentrating solely on dealing with the Shadow Mist assassin, such that they never achieved their intended goal, though? Even though a period of peace had resumed, Gu Fei was well aware that he was not in a favorable position at all. At this point, he was essentially being attacked from the front and the back, and he could no longer afford to be as brazen as before. Thinking of this, he postponed his plan to take care of the 7 men and ran into the fog as well. While this might not be an issue for the boss, he would at the very least no longer be harassed by the 7 men. There was no way he could continue to survive all the fireballs and homing projectiles they were throwing at him, no matter how low the damage of these attacks was. Gu Fei was hiding in the fog. Munching on his piece of bread, he thought of how to deal with the Shadow Mist assassin. It was fine that it had a fast movement speed and attack speed, and Gu Fei was positive that he would be able to find a way to deal with this boss if it were willing to face him directly. However, the problem now was how it was going in and out of the fog to plant a few stabs on its target before instantly retreating back to the safety of the fog. Gu Fei did not think he would be able to continue this back and forth if it continued. He was a human, after all. There was no way he would not make a mistake forever, considering how machines would not deteriorate due to fatigue like humans would. Careful, they're currently moving in your direction, Sword Demon reminded him. You should take care as well, Gu Fei said. Sword Demon verbally gave him a heads up while he was stealthed just now, so the squad would surely be aware that a stealthed thief was around. They did not make any move, mainly because it had only been a sudden shout on Sword Demon's part, and they were unable to accurately tell where this person was situated. They were most likely on high alert right now, and Sword Demon would definitely be bombarded the moment he gave more hints as to where he was hiding. Before Gu Fei could even see the effect of that piece of bread, he spotted a mass of figures in the fog. He hurriedly backed off now that he knew it was that lot of men heading toward him. What's the situation? Young Master Han and Brother Assist had finally arrived, and they immediately sent off a message asking about the situation. Take care. The boss is somewhere around here. Be careful, it might attack you guys, Gu Fei warned. I doubt that. Why will we have its aggro when we've just arrived? Did Southern Lone Blade and his crew not even manage to draw any aggro of it at all? Young Master Han asked. The mercenary channel was silent for quite some time before Sword Demon said, it is Miles who earned its aggro. Wah ha ha ha. What an expert, indeed. So what? Did he solo the boss again? Young Master Han asked in a mocking tone. He could tell from the message Gu Fei had sent moments ago that even the video mage was having trouble dealing with the boss this time. Just as this message was sent out, Young Master Han and Brother Assist heard the crisp sound of metal meeting metal somewhere in front of them on the left. They turned their heads over and saw a black figure flying out. He did not manage to find purchase on the ground and ended up sprawled on the ground right before Brother Assist and Young Master Han after backing out several steps. He. Experts are truly different, huh? Is he bearing the momentum even as he dove to the ground like that, or is he just sliding on his back? Young Master Han asked Brother Assist. Chapter 437, Changing at high speed, Gufei looked awful with how he lay sprawled on the ground while facing the sky. Even though he had experienced being toppled before, this time had him being tossed to the ground right in front of people who knew him, which only served to deepen his feeling of embarrassment. This was especially true after young Master Han mercilessly mocked him for it, which did quite a number on his pride. However, it was all the more important for him to remain calm and collected at such times. There was a saying, never let your enemies get a grasp of your mental processes. While young Master Han was not an enemy on paper, if he were to reveal to him his look of embarrassment, it would only serve to please the man, and the ensuing ridicule would only be all the more vicious. Thus, not only did Gufei not reveal any trace of embarrassment at what had happened, he even continued to lie there and meet the gaze of the two men, smiling, "So that's where you two are. Sorry for accidentally catching sight of you when you're in such a state of distress," young Master Han said. "Don't worry about it. If you want to be in this state as well, I can help you create the opportunity," Gufei retorted. The two men continued their verbal dispute. Fortunately, Brother Assist was far kinder. The knight came over to help Gufei up, but, unexpectedly, the very moment he bent over to help, young Master Han and Gufei yelled, "Quickly get away!" Brother Assist was startled and subconsciously shrank to one side. When he lifted his head, he saw a grayish figure leap from within the fog and, completely defying the physical laws, suddenly dive right over, targeting Gufei, who was still lying on the ground. All that pointless entry, what a waste of that quick movement speed. Gufei derided the efficiency of the Shadow Mist Assassin as he quickly did a side roll on the ground. If this boss was capable of changing direction mid-air, Gufei would just submit to his fate. Thankfully, the system was not shameless to such a degree. Gufei rolled out of the way as the Shadow Mist Assassin completed its aerial attack, landing on the ground in a half squat as both its hands gripped the daggers tightly in a forward thrust, merely 10 centimeters away from where young Master Han and Brother Assist stood. The Shadow Mist Assassin paused, a moment that young Master Han and Brother Assist felt last for a long while. If the Shadow Mist Assassin went for an explosive strike toward the two of them, they were certain that neither of them would have any chance of retaliating. All they could do was pray that the Shadow Mist Assassin act in accordance to the rules and continue chasing after the target of its aggro, Gufei. Indeed, the Shadow Mist Assassin did not let them down. This pause that seemingly lasted for an eternity passed, and it darted away while wielding its daggers to carve out an upward gash, as if it wanted to split Gufei in two. Obviously, Gufei did not give it such a chance. Springing upward from a squat, he used the time the boss needed to cover the distance for its attack to gain some height in that jump. His hands brushed his sword down to block that attack from the Shadow Mist Assassin. However, the strength behind this attack was overwhelming, so much so that there was no way Gufei would be able to absorb all that momentum while in the air. All he could do was to spontaneously execute a scorpion's backflip to leap away. The Shadow Mist Assassin continued to give chase, stabbing right out as it rushed to follow. Gufei placed his sword precisely right across his chest as metal clanked yet again. He found himself shooting out like a cannonball and disappearing into the fog again. The Shadow Mist Assassin once more landed on the ground in a half squat before sprinting over as another sound of weapons clashing came from within the fog dozens of meters away. Young Master Han and Brother Assist exchanged glances. It seemed that they had grossly underestimated the prowess of this boss. "That boss is so scary, I wonder what its name," Brother Assist muttered. His booklet of information had never had any record of a monster so frightening. Gufei's the one who is far scarier. How is he not dead? Does he even have a limit? Young Master Han finally expressed his shock at Gufei's prowess. For once, it was truly beyond his imagination. Young Master Han himself was unable to see the Shadow Mist Assassin's attacks, yet that man was able to accurately block each blow. In the heavy fog, the abrupt weapon clash sounds rang time to time, sometimes far and sometimes near, occasionally to the left or to the right. Everybody around could not help but hold their breath. They were unable to watch the battle themselves, but just the sound alone was enough to affect them completely. This included Southern Lone Blade's 7-man squad as well, forgetting for a moment that the two that were making those sounds were originally their targets. They had originally been heading in the direction where Gufei had retreated into the mist, even looking forward to Gufei being thrown into their range of attack by the Shadow Mist Assassin once more. Unfortunately, the reality proved to be otherwise. They heard the two exchange blows, yet Gufei no longer came sailing toward them like before. The clashing sounds they heard from time to time after were all happening in different positions. The seven of them maintained that circular formation of theirs, yet they were entirely unable to keep up with the directional changes of the sound. When the clink of metal was heard far away, all of them got anxious, almost wishing to disperse from their formation and give chase individually. But when the sound occurred near them, they instantly dismissed such a thought. There were even times when they could almost visibly make out the figure of the two men going back and forth with each other. They were all looking mightily pale at this moment. After witnessing that 900-degree twin incineration, the strength of Gufei had in their hearts sublimated once more. Look at the speed he possesses. The black and the gray figures continued to fight in that thick fog, flickering by with a movement speed not too different from one another. Nobody made a sound, as dead silence descended. Limp Hands, who was stuck amid the seven men, could already feel the mood change in the air. That composed look that this squad showed ever since he first came into contact with them had long disappeared, each now replaced with a look of fear and disbelief. From time to time, they would look to the person beside them, as if they were seeking for some form of consolation from one another. The seven of them had made the mistake of letting their paranoia overcome them in their panic this time. While it was true that Gufei was able to block the Shadow Mist Assassin's attacks, he simply did not have that quick of a movement speed. He only attained such a speed as a result of the force behind the Shadow Mist Assassin's attack that sent him flying each time, and it was entirely not of his accord. It was too bad that this fog made it impossible for these people to see just how exhausted Gufei looked fighting like this. Thus, the occasional flashes of movement they saw were just the figure of the two men whizzing past at high speed, and the sound of their weapons clashing that was constantly changing their position at high speed had left the seven of them in a state of shock. What do we do now? Do we advance or retreat? This was the question that they were pondering on. At the same time, over on young Master's Elite's side, Sword Demon also asked the same question, what do we do? Young Master Han replied effortlessly, let's just leave the boss for Miles to take on a walk. Let's focus on dealing with Southern Lone Blade, instead. Because the Shadow Mist Assassin would retreat into the heavy fog from time to time after a few rounds of attack and repeat the process all over again, Gufei was able to find the time to read his messages. The moment he saw what young Master Han had said, he immediately wanted to insta-kill him. Gufei did not have a shred of doubt that he was definitely at a disadvantage facing against the Shadow Mist Assassin. He had not found any chance of winning or even a chance to retaliate after all this while. If this continued on, not only would he be killed by the Shadow Mist Assassin once he made a mistake, the others would also kill Southern Lone Blade and result in him losing on both fronts. Gufei was of course still thinking about turning that payment from killing Southern Lone Blade. This was precisely the quality of perseverance a person should ideally have. This Sword Demon was a bit hesitant. Haha, Miles, can you hold on? Young Master Han asked. I'll hold on to your mother. Gufei finally could not stand this any longer and cursed, instantly feeling quite satisfied. He even felt some of the confidence that he had lost after being constantly targeted by the SMA come back to him. Haha, don't be so irascible. Calm down and face your enemy. Hold on for a bit. We'll come help deal with the boss the moment we take care of those guys. Have those two motherfucking idiots, Royal and Wounds, arrived yet? Young Master Han also began cursing as well. We're here. The two happily messaged out on the mercenary channel. Where's the boss? Royal God Call asked, unable to contain his excitement. Haven't you seen the plan we've come up with over here? Let's deal with Southern Lone Blade Squad first before taking on that boss, young Master Han replied. Leave Southern Lone Blade to me. Gufei bellowed. That will have to depend on whether you can take down that boss and make it over before we kill off Southern Lone Blade. Ha 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 ha. Young Master Han gloated. Despicable. Gufei raged. They could all hear War Without Wounds' throaty shout over on the other side of the fog. Southern Lone Blade, where the fuck are you? Come out and present yourself to yours truly. Come out, come out. Royal God Call helped to add by the side. I don't think I've stated the tactics yet, have I? Young Master Han asked Brother Assist, standing right beside him. "Seems like everyone's in high spirits when dealing with a boss," Brother Assist replied. "Still, it's good to have those two guys yelling randomly to create a sense of oppression on those guys," young Master Han said. Sure enough, Southern Lone Blade's 7-man squad was currently pondering on their next course of action. All of them became flustered when they heard the sudden shouts of Royal God Call and War Without Wounds from within the fog. "Are they all here? Sounds like there are just two." "There may be two voices in the fog, but who knows how many there truly are. We definitely can't head in that direction. There's sure to be a trap." Unknowingly, the thoughts of the 7 of them seemed to have inadvertently gone in favor of retreating. At that moment, they were rejecting to leave in the route where War Without Wounds and Royal God Call had been shouting, but they did not know that the two were merely mindlessly shouting. "Miles, are you able to supply us with flame-singed clothes current coordinates?" young Master Han asked. They got no reply but were able to vaguely hear the muffled sound of weapons clashing from within the fog. "He's busy," young Master Han muttered, and so he instructed that pair, "Don't just yell in one spot. Run around, change your position." The two acted accordingly, moving to change their position even as they continued to yell at Southern Lone Blade and his squad, shouting things like "I dare you to tell us your coordinates. Let's have a death match," and every sort of cliché line. "They are changing their position." When they heard this happen, the squad all turned to regard Southern Lone Blade. Southern Lone Blade sighed. It was usually a breeze being the boss of this squad, but he naturally had to assume responsibility when shit hit the fan. After spending a short moment to think about the matter, he finally came to a decision. "Let's disperse." Southern Lone Blade clapped his hands on the shoulders of Limp Hands. "Bro, it just so happens that our hated enemies have managed to catch up to us. It seems that we aren't able to complete today's mission for you." Limp Hands looked instantly disappointed. He perfectly understood that Southern Lone Blade was no longer able to help him complete his mission now that their enemies were at their front door. However, their choice of dispersing instead of facing off against these men made Limp Hands feel that their image as experts was not as big as he had imagined. Chapter 438, Total Collapse. Southern Lone Blade, you'd better get your butt out here for yours truly. Royal God Call and War Without Wounds continued to shout and holler as they stomped about in the fog. They had never once revealed their figures as they continued to harass that squad with their voices alone. The thief Sword Demon was able to keep them updated with coordinates, since he was stealthed right by the side of Southern Lone Blade's squad during this whole ordeal. Southern Lone Blade, who had also not forgotten about this, immediately ordered flame-singed clothes to blanket the area with his AO spells. At this moment, Southern Lone Blade's squad had a different goal as to when they started, so how they dealt with Sword Demon would also be different. Before, they had hoped to find out where he was hiding and directly kill him with a concerted strike, but now their goal was simply to make him retreat, so that he could no longer have vision of them. However, Sword Demon was actually far bolder than they thought. The moment he saw the spells began to sequentially be cast on him, the only option he had to maintain stealth would be to retreat as soon as he could, but he decisively cancelled his stealth instead and grandly revealed himself right before the whole enemy squad. Glue and flame-singed clothes instantly aimed at the enemy and attacked, but Sword Demon easily evaded these attacks. In terms of movement speed, he was faster than Goofy. In terms of his ability to discern the attacks from the opponents he was facing, he too possessed a skilled judgment honed through gaming that Goofy lacked. Take flame-singed clothes lifting his arm as an example. Sword Demon was able to instantly tell where the center of his spell was, how wide the ensuing AO, and when he needed to begin running to avoid it entirely. The man was more than capable of achieving the level of analysis that Royal God Call, Drifting, or any other mage experts had. War Without Wounds and Royal God Call were the #1 warrior and mage across MMOs respectively, but that was only when Sword Demon did not coincidentally choose the same job class as either of the two. The indomitability of Sword Demon in MMOs had already transcended the limit of job classes. It did not matter what job class he chose, he would simply be #1 in any. Even though he had chosen to be a thief, he did not neglect to do his research on the other job classes as well. This was work that Goofy would never do. In fact, There was a high chance that the man did not even have a good grasp of his mage job class. Glue and flame-singed clothes were better off forgetting about scoring an easy hit against such an opponent. Compared to Gufei, Sword Demon simply lacked the prowess to directly hit his targets with every move he made, yet he too would still leave the two men helpless. Furthermore, Sword Demon mimicked what the boss did. He would retreat into the fog to rest up from time to time and would soon dive back into their midst to continue his harassment to the 7 men. The 7-man squad was left feeling vexed when they saw how flagrant the thief was at keeping an eye on them. That boss's aggro should still be on 1,000 miles drunk right now. Is there really a need to maintain this formation? Blackwater was miserable when he saw how cruel this assassin was looking while harassing them. After being pushed toward his death by Gufei before, he was now back at level 39. He was no longer an assassin but merely a thief. The difference in strength between level 38 and 39 or 40 and 42 might only be 1 or 2 levels, and the impact it had on a character's strength was nothing particularly huge. However, there was a distinct qualitative improvement from level 39 to 40, all thanks to the existence of the job class advancement available at level 40. Not only would their job class be further refined, they would also gain traits that serve to amplify their job class features. Even their stats would become stronger as a result of this change. This was precisely why there was no possibility for a level 40 player to lose to a level 39 player unless they were in a state where they had literally no salvation. Dropping from level 40 to 39 essentially gave off the same feeling anybody had riding a bicycle when they had previously been driving a car. It was truly too huge a fall. Calm down. Southern Lone Blade understood what Blackwater was feeling, but he knew that rashness was the last thing they needed. Beware, he just might lead us into a trap. Southern Lone Blade was simply overly cautious here. Sword Demon was merely toying with them casually. How was it even possible for young Masters Elite to set up a trap for them? Their strongest DP Sare was busy engaging with the boss right now, while Royal God Call and War Without Wounds had been relegated to the duty of a bugler, running all over and making an empty show of strength. Only Sword Demon, who was advancing and retreating before their eyes, was capable of mounting any sort of assault. What sort of trap could the priest young Master Han and the Night Brother assist set up for them, anyway? Instead, it was precisely this mental state he was now in that was the real trap. The thick fog all around him had clouded his judgment. Doubts began to fill him, and his uncertainty was spreading to those around him. Actually, they no longer needed to calm down now. Instead, what they'd needed was a bit of impulsiveness to daringly ignore the ravings of War Without Wounds and Royal God Call, as well as the harassment of Sword Demon, and make a run for it in one direction. After all, young Masters Elites did not have any big move that could do anything to them. Unfortunately, young Master Han had managed to get a firm grasp of their psychology, and was now using the foggy weather to unsettle them in such a way that they somehow believed that there were thousands of reinforcements hiding in the fog, waiting for them to walk into the lion's den of their accord. As this feeling of anxiety continued to mount, the 7 began to become more and more paranoid. Since each of them have a different psychological threshold, the symptoms they presented differ. While Southern Lone Blade was able to calmly think of a plan, Blackwater's mental state was now in total chaos. When he saw that glue and flame-singed clothes attacks continued to be ineffectual, he bellowed, "I'm gonna kill you." He then left the safety of the circle and dashed right toward Sword Demon. Blackwater! Southern Lone Blade yelled to stop the man, but the 2 others beside the thief never expected Blackwater to react like this, so they were unable to prevent him from lunging at Sword Demon. Even though Southern Lone Blade and his crew needed a level of impulsiveness and hot-bloodedness, they did not need the rashness from just one man, for that was no better than the 7 of them continuing to paranoidly hold on like what they had been doing. Sword Demon conscientiously retreated the moment he saw Blackwater dash toward him. Blackwater, who had abandoned his companions behind by charging ahead, activated his fleet-foot to chase after Sword Demon the moment he disappeared into the fog. Motherfucker! Southern Lone Blade cursed as the now 6-man circle hurried to move themselves in the same direction. The sound of Blackwater's roar could still be heard from the fog, but it was nothing like the clear and crisp sound of weapons intermittently clashing between Gu Fei and the Shadow Mist assassin. The six of them hurried to get close when that roar of his suddenly ceased. There remained just a lone figure in the fog when Southern Lone Blade and the others got close. Sword Demon was standing there as if nothing had happened as he passively stated, "He's now at level 38. A thief below level 40 was definitely no match for an enemy that had taken the advancement to be an assassin. This was even more since Blackwater went against an Apex MMO expert. He had already lost his cool and depended on nothing more than his sheer passion. If that was useful in any sense, then this would be a shonen manga, but this was regrettably a MMO. So it took Sword Demon less than 5 seconds to handily defeat Blackwater in this head-to-head. That's still too slow. Sword Demon thought to himself. Miles needs no more than a second to slay that man. This was what it meant to be an expert. They were the sort that would never be contented with their accomplishment, forever pursuing the next realm they could transcend toward. Although what Sword Demon was currently pursuing was a little too much. Don't let go of that rascal. Flame-Singed Clothes was angered. He was already feeling guilty over Blackwater's previous death, and while he was not at fault this time around, he was nevertheless emotionally affected by it. His bellow carried that twinge of madness as he raised his magic staff. Everything went quiet. Everybody was waiting for Flame-Singed Clothes' incantation. But who would have expected that the man would not utter a word even with his raised staff? It was just deafening silence. Flame-Singed Clothes realized with fright that he had somehow forgotten what the incantation for the spell was. Some psychological studies had shown that a person's memory could be adversely affected when experiencing anxiety. Oft-seen examples of this would be during an exam when people found it difficult to recall what they had previously reviewed, and during a job interview when they had difficulty answering the interviewer's questions as a result of mental pressure or anxiety. There were even exaggerated cases of people forgetting their names when put on the hot seat. At the moment, Flame-Singed Clothes forgot the spell incantations he had chanted countless times in the past. The entire squad was under an insurmountable pressure right now. Not wanting to lose their lives was only a small contributor to this. A large part was due to them feeling cornered in their frustration toward what they thought was a helpless situation. What sort of human would be entirely unaffected when facing all these negative emotions at once? Blackwater was already tilted and paid for it. Flame-Singed Clothes really wanted to mount an attack, but Cat suddenly got his tongue. Right now, Southern Lone Blade was not looking too good, either, as he quickly reminded the others, "Everyone, don't panic." What should we do, then? Another reason why everybody was panicking was that Southern Lone Blade had not been able to come up with any bright plan all this time. Fuck it. Charge. Southern Lone Blade finally bit the bullet. There really was no other choice now, and no one was in control of their emotional state. Their psychological state was really important. Most athletes participating in various sports competitions would split this into 3 aspects: mind, body, and skill. It would be impossible to accomplish anything if any one of these failed to function properly. At this time, rather than everyone continuing to panic, it was better for them to just charge over. Southern Lone Blade had really been far too tilted, as his current cry for everyone to charge did not stem from him wishing to attempt a final gambit but from him wanting to make matters worse for everyone involved. They are about to charge. Sword Demon could clearly discern what the squad was intending to do and immediately retreated. No matter how much of an expert he was, he knew he was nowhere as heaven-defying as Gu Fei, capable of defeating 6 or 7 of these top experts. "They're acting faster than I thought they would," young Master Han said. He had been looking forward for the squad to lose control and fall apart one by one, but they instead broke down together as a group after one of them had died, a total collapse as everyone lost control and became no more like a swarm of bees. A direct confrontation right now would be a 6 versus 6 scenario. Limp Hands was a noob who would not be of any help, so he could be ignored even if he decided to participate. The members were all experts on both sides, so there was no way young Master's elite could ensure that they would be victorious if such a fight broke out. They would have long attacked had this not been the case. Why else would they bother to instigate this mental breakdown in their enemies? Otherwise, this was a sudden change that left even young Master Han a little at a loss on what they should do. War Without Wounds and Royal God Call were still making a ruckus in the periphery under his instructions. There was no way War Without Wounds would be able to make it to intercept their enemies given what little time they had. While Royal God Call, he would have to match War Without Wounds' speed if he needed to follow him. His speed would be in the negative if he left the proximity of War Without Wounds, given the current environment they were in. In the end, this was more of a 3 versus 6 fight, and Sword Demon was the only expert that could deal anything significant. This was definitely not an advantageous situation they had found themselves in. Try your best to stall for time. The two of you will have to hurry over. Young Master Han gave these two instructions to the rest accordingly. Whatever tactics, strategies, or ruses that were currently being enacted would have to end here, and what ensued would be a melee brawl that came down to close combat. It would now be a match of bravery and resoluteness between either side. Young Master Han felt the slightest sense of foreboding regarding this. A battle of bravery and resolution? The enemy clearly had the upper hand on this level. The enemy squad had already changed their formation. Southern Lone Blade was at the helm of the charge with a shield placed before him. Glue and flame-singed clothes were each on the left and right, while the two priests and the knight were wedged in the center of these 3 points as they all made a beeline for Sword Demon. Brother Assist sent a blessing over to Sword Demon, as young Master Han sighed when he saw how the enemies were rushing toward them. Let them go if you can't handle them. We're not in a rush at the moment. Sword Demon did not reply, his grip tightening around his daggers. Chapter 439, Extreme Frustration. Even if I am unable to impede them, I should be able to take out 1 to 3 of them. This was what Sword Demon confidently thought to himself. He could tell that the enemies were in an emotional wreck. While they might be experiencing a burst of courage, they were sure to have lost their usual skilled coordination that came from their tacit understanding of one another. Contrasting that to his side, Sword Demon glanced at young Master Han, whom he had fought countless battles with together. They were a little nervous since they were not holding a clear advantage, but young Master Han happened to be the sword whose state of mind would never be affected by any circumstances they found themselves in. Considering that the severe narcissism he suffered was definitely a little abnormal, it could not be denied that this worked to be the strongest sort of self-confidence. Sword Demon believed that even if this man were eating dirt as he got stomped under the foot of another, he would still present that look of supreme arrogance. Sword Demon had even sometimes considered that this was no longer narcissism, but that the man had long since hypnotized himself. Despite the unfavorable circumstance, young Master Han would surely not make a mistake. The coordination between the two would still be flawless. With such a thought in mind, Sword Demon firmly believed he would be able to take down 2 or 3 men. Southern Lone Blade and his crew had already plunged into the fog. When they realized that there was not a horde of reinforcement waiting to ambush them like they had imagined, and there were only a measly 3 players, their frame of mind took a turn for the worse. It was the unknown enemies hiding within the fog that had always been mentally harassing them, so if the horde they had imagined were to appear before them now, they could at least practically explain their tumultuous emotions. However, it turned out there were only 3 players. Just 3. This was not a trap at all, so where was the real trap or ambush located? The 6 men were vexed, yet they did not stop their assault. This was the last bit of will to fight they had accumulated, and they had placed it all in this one charge. Stopping now would mean that in the bottom of their hearts, they were already compromising and giving up. Of course, they would be unwilling to give up, even if they were unable to see the horde of enemies. They would first use these 3 men to vent their frustrations. Flame-singed clothes was the first to slow down and stop. He would have to stop moving if he wanted to chant and cast a spell. At the very least, he did not forget about this ironclad rule set by the system. Palatial balefire. Rise. Flame-singed clothes loudly chanted. Flames shot up the sky right before Brother Assist and young Master Han, but neither of them moved when they heard him cast his spell. Sword Demon already saw through where the spell would be placed, so his longtime combat buddy, young Master Han, should be able to do the same as well. Young Master Han was gifted when it came to matters pertaining to coordinates, distance, and other spatial issues, and what he could perhaps see was even more thorough and clear than many others. Besides, it was not really anything difficult to begin with. Plenty of experts out there would be capable of doing this much. At most, Players might occasionally make a mistake in judgment when they were repositioning themselves, but it was almost impossible for them to make such a mistake in the first round of spell bombardment. Flame-Singed Clothes should understand this point well, and he should of course know that the people he was facing today were not just the average noobs. Unfortunately, Flame-Singed Clothes had experienced far too many setbacks today. His spells were seen through by the enemies he had met and produced absolutely no results time and time again. The palatial balefire he had thought was impossible to overcome had easily been passed by eternal dominions while climbing Andex and Gufei's blink. He had died to his palatial balefire back in Linshui City, with someone even curiously asking him if that counted as a park point. After that, he had unintentionally led the players of Blue Umbra Guild to his comrades, almost jeopardizing everyone's lives over by the shore of Linshui City. When they got to Xiaota City, when everyone was picking clients, he managed to find himself someone with a weird character in their name. And after all those fiascos, he indirectly caused Blackwater to die to his palatial balefire when the latter helped him escape. No one asked him about his park value this time, but he would most likely break down if anyone did. Unbeknown to him, it was because of this one park point he had gained that compromised their location, leading to their current predicament. Flame-Singed Clothes was stewing in deep frustration thanks to the string of defeats he had experienced today. Seeing this knight and this priest stand unflinchingly to his spell and treating it as if it were their background, whatever self-confidence Flame-Singed Clothes had left simply vanished. He originally did not cast his palatial balefire to burn the two. He had merely intended to conjure up a barrier to cut off the three men's retreat, so that the horde of enemies would not make their way over with ease. In the end, the two men did not do a thing, but it was precisely their inaction that had struck a heavy blow to him. Flame-Singed Clothes had planned to immediately toss out his blazing tree of 1,000 inferno to set forth a firestorm as a follow-up to his palatial balefire, but he failed to do that right now as he had forgotten his spell incantation once more. He was no longer certain what he was supposed to do and just stupidly rushed forth with the rest, as if he were a warrior. The real warrior was Southern Lone Blade, and he was leading the charge. As the one who had the most wits about him among the six, he kept his eyes on the man standing at the forefront of the three men, Sword Demon. He raised his shield and prepared to activate his charge toward the man. Sword Demon changed his position and headed toward their flank. While they intended to impede the six men, that did not mean that they must face them head-on. If Sword Demon were to hurtle forward to block them, that would mean he was the one who had lost his wits. How could one man face six players in a direct clash? The only person who could do such a thing was Gufei, not Sword Demon. Even though Sword Demon admired Gufei, he was not foolish enough to mimic how that man fought. He had his line of thinking, which was to fight by maximizing the unique features of his job class as best as he could. The Shadow Mist Assassin had already given everybody present a good interpretation of what this sort of fighting style was like: never mount an assault from the front. This was what it meant to be an assassin. Since Sword Demon had advanced into this job class, he would avoid the sword tip of the warrior and circle to his flank. The player beside him was Flame-Singed Clothes, and it was a Flame-Singed Clothes who no longer know what he should be doing. Naturally, Sword Demon was entirely unaware of Flame-Singed Clothes' current state of mind. All he thought was that the presence of this mage was a threat, especially after everybody had that dangerous brush with death back in Lori City thanks to his spellcasting. This was why he chose to dart toward this man in hopes of finding a chance to eliminate this potential complication. Flame-Singed Clothes did not react to this sudden change at all, as he continued to dash forward like an idiot. Singed Southern Lone Blade was shocked. He had already turned and was prepared to deal with Sword Demon. Under normal circumstances, when facing such a maneuver, Flame-Singed Clothes would quickly dodge into the cover of his shield, but, today, he instead daringly ran past him and continued to charge onward as if he were a warrior. Even Sword Demon was confused by this. None of them had thought that Flame-Singed Clothes' mental state would break down to this extent, as no one had understood why Flame-Singed Clothes was so rough and rugged today. Flame-Singed Clothes! Several voices bellowed to him. Flame-Singed Clothes suddenly woke up from his stupor. He merely had a bout of amnesia and was not like Blackwater from before, who had lost all sense of himself. By the time he returned to his senses, Flame-Singed Clothes had found himself separated from the rest of the squad, standing alone in an empty space on that battlefield, which was a huge taboo to a mage. Flame-singed clothes' countenance changed. Brother Assist did not miss this opportunity and dashed over to the mage, giving the man a slash. This slash was by no means weak. The damage output from Brother Assist had a qualitative leap upon advancing as a Dark Knight. Comparing across the job classes, Dark Knights actually came in second in terms of damage output from a basic attack, and it only lost to Berserkers on that front. This strike, which applied a status effect to him, roused the Mage Flame-singed clothes. Brother Assist's Twilight Blade had a 10% chance of applying the weakened status on his opponents. While he had very fortunately procced it, it was unfortunate that it had occurred on Flame-singed clothes. It was a pointless application since the effect of weaken would severely reduce the amount of physical damage output of its target. It had no impact on Flame-singed clothes at all as he was a mage. Brother Assist did not often participate in PvP, much less take on experts, but that did not affect his confidence at being able to dominate a mage in melee combat. Meanwhile, Southern Lone Blade, who had originally been preparing to deal with Sword Demon, instantly changed his target and came to assist his comrade, charging right over to Brother Assist. Brother Assist's lack of experience in such group battles immediately became apparent as his body began to perspire and his legs turn jelly, which were often symptoms found in noobs when they first PvP'd. These symptoms did not occur when he was bullying a mage in melee, but now that Southern Lone Blade was charging at him, Brother Assist instantly became a mess. He scrambled to evade this charge, but his movement was extremely uncoordinated. Southern Lone Blade was charging toward him with a shield and sword as a guardian. The area of impact would be large, so that made it difficult to dodge. How fast could Brother Assist run now that he was moving so awkwardly? Half of Southern Lone Blade's shield ended up colliding right into him, while he was not thrown into the air by the collision. Brother Assist ended up spinning round before collapsing on the ground. Sword Demon really wished he could cover his eyes when he saw this, sighing to himself. I've long heard of Brother Assist, who is well versed in theoretical knowledge, being a total noob when it comes to real combat operations. Seems that there's plenty of truth to this rumor. After all, Southern Lone Blade managed to save Flame-singed clothes by knocking Brother Assist over. He followed this up with a blow to the fallen Dark Knight. Brother Assist sure was fated when it came to proc chances today. He had just managed to activate that 10% weakened status moments ago, and now he managed to obtain the faint status from this one charge. At the moment, he lay sprawled on the floor dealing with the status, unable to put up even a bit of resistance as he took that blow from Southern Lone Blade in its totality. A flash of light passed the man as young Master Han's timely heel caressed him. Knights possessed a balanced stat point distribution, so their defense was not terrible, making them difficult to insta-kill. With a priest by the side providing healing, it was essentially impossible for Southern Lone Blade to achieve anything. Nevertheless, Southern Lone Blade was a bona fide experienced veteran. Seeing the heal land after his strike, he did not waste any time and immediately stepped over the fallen Brother Assist and strode toward young Master Han, not even turning his head back as he ordered Flame-singed clothes, "Kill this man." Sword Demon and young Master Han's heart soured, as this was a scenario that they had not foreseen. Brother Assist had always been in a support role when he played with everyone, occasionally joining the rest to massacre their enemies. Most of the time, he would only join in to help speed up the process when victory was certain. Strictly speaking, today was the first day he had acted independently like this. Even though he had myriads of theories when it came to PvP, his insufficient experience made him no more than a caricature of actual application. Sword Demon and young Master Han had originally calculated that the enemies would entirely focus on Sword Demon, so the battle could be dragged out as long as they could, with Sword Demon using his superior movement speed and young Master Han supporting by the side. They had not expected Brother Assist to attack and subsequently get taken down, allowing their enemies to take advantage of this terrible situation. Ignoring Sword Demon and young Master Han, Brother Assist was still fainted on the ground, while Flame-singed clothes was standing right beside him. Raising his staff, he pointed it toward Brother Assist. "Let's see you dodge this now." Flame-singed clothes' confidence rallied once more. It was at this tense moment that a weird sound was heard from within the fog. Soon after, they saw a gray figure, which was flashing blue and yellow, hurtled out from the fog and right into the crowd. Everybody caught sight of this and exclaimed in unison, "Boss!" Chapter 440. We are all passing through the shadow mist. Assassin was wreathed in electricity as it fell before everyone. It had been hiding out in the fog all this while, coming in and out just like a gust of wind. With its fall to the ground, this was actually everybody's first time getting a good look at this boss. Its scrawny frame was clad in a gray assassin's garb from head to toe. It held a dagger in one hand and pushed itself off the ground with the other. Everybody was astounded by this, and they involuntarily took a step back. While this boss was indeed worthy to be afraid of, it was that person who was still in the fog that struck terror in their hearts. Could that man be intending to defeat the boss? Flame-singed clothes was even more a loss in his thoughts right now. He was a mage as well, yet why was there such a huge disparity between him and that man? That person could solo such an indomitable boss, while he could only take down a noob knight who was barely able to put up any sort of resistance. The Shadow Mist assassin was evidently not dead, yet no one dared to move. Everybody was really close to it, and they were all afraid that any sudden movement might draw the boss's aggro onto themselves. Even though the aggro system clearly calculated it, only the system was privy to the computation itself. What would they do if it simply decided to be unreasonable this time around? The Shadow Mist assassin got up. It shook its arms and bellowed, and this motion caused the electricity coursing through its body to quickly disappear. Color drained from everyone's faces. How powerful! Don't make a mountain of a molehill, young Master Han said, throwing a look of disdain at the rest. It's just a dispel skill of sorts. They were all veterans with plenty of knowledge when it came to MMOs, so they immediately realized what this meant. A skill that could dispel meant that it was able to remove any physical status. The Shadow Mist assassin looked really cool when it dispelled the electricity racking its body with that shake of its two arms, yet all it was actually doing was relieve itself of the paralyzed status. Once the Shadow Mist assassin removed its paralysis, it instantly dove back into the fog. Everyone stared, flabbergasted. Everybody had stopped what they were doing at the sudden appearance of this boss, as if this were a scene from a movie storyboard. In the end, before they could even resume what they had been doing, another figure came out from the fog. Only, this time, the figure was purely clad in black and had no electrical current coursing through its body. Moreover, instead of flying over, this black figure came stomping out so loudly everyone could hear his every step. 1,000 miles drunk. This person whom everybody had deemed as an even more frightening existence than the boss suddenly appeared in front of them. His sword was still in his hand, but his robe was covered dirt. Gufei had found himself tumbling on the ground quite a few times during this fight with a Shadow Mist assassin, and he was looking grimy like a garbage collector right now. "Where's the boss?" Gufei asked Sword Demon as he jogged over while looking all around him. "He went that way." Sword Demon pointed the direction the Shadow Mist assassin had gone to. "Why didn't you guys attack it?" Gufei asked. Everybody lowered their heads in shame. The sudden appearance of the boss had scared everyone so much that not one of them dared to move, worried that it would latch onto them as a result. Everybody felt as if this question Gufei had asked them was far too pointed. Sword Demon was feeling somewhat guilty himself, so he hurriedly changed the topic. "Shouldn't you be hurrying to chase after it? What indomitability!" The people present could feel their hatred and jealousy intermingling. None of them dared to move even a muscle when the boss appeared before them, yet this man here was actually after the boss head. The difference was simply far too jarring. As everybody thought of this, Gufei did not seem to be in a hurry to rush back on its trail. Instead, he was gazing at Sword Demon with astonishment. "Are you kidding me? I barely managed to lose it and get myself some breathing space. Why would I be in a hurry to chase after it?" Everybody was stunned, thinking to themselves, "DSK, so you're no match for the boss as well." After all, Southern Lone Blades gang felt slightly better about themselves, but they soon shuddered. Now that 1,000 miles drunk doesn't have to keep the boss company, won't that mean that he can turn his sword onto us? How are we gonna have any hope of surviving if we add that man into the mix now? Pessimism once more held them in its embrace, but before too long, a figure appeared in the fog again. The Shadow Mist assassin rushed out imposingly as it searched for its target. It ignored everyone else and only dashed straight toward Gufei. Everybody watched as an attack homed in on Gufei's back, who sighed as he turned around to block the strike. The Shadow Mist Assassin's dagger connected with Gu Fei's sword once more as he went flying off. Both parties were now lost within the fog again, leaving a crowd that was in shock. It turned out that it was the high-speed exchange of blows between Gu Fei and the Shadow Mist Assassin that had coincidentally sent the two in the path of the PvP fight. In other words, those two were only passing through. The only difference this time was that Gu Fei had finally managed to find a chance to attack. Delivering a blow with his palm of thunder and blink, Gu Fei accurately struck the back of the charging Shadow Mist Assassin. The repulsion effect from that blow as well as the momentum from the Shadow Mist Assassin resulted in it being sent flying just this once. Gu Fei was already low on mana after connecting this one blow, but it barely seemed to affect the Shadow Mist Assassin, and even the rare proc of the paralysis effect from his palm of thunder had been easily shrugged off by this boss with a shake of its arms. The sound of the two's clashing disappeared after a few exchanges, once more lost within the fog as the crowd present snapped back to the issue at hand. Continue. Nobody knew who shouted this, but it was as if someone had pressed the play button. The scene resumed its motion as every player began to do what they had been doing moments ago. Southern Lone Blade continued to chase after young Master Han, looking to kill the healer. The movement speed of these two was not too different from one another, so Southern Lone Blade was unable to catch up to the target at the moment. All he could do now was wait for the cooldown of his charge to finish, and catching up to that priest was only a matter of time. Unfortunately, Brother Assist's faint status had yet to end, so Flame-Singed Clothes was still able to raise his staff in an attempt to bombard him with spells. Sword Demon expended the best of his efforts to rush over and lend a hand, but Glue led the knight and the two priests to stick to him. The knight in Southern Lone Blade's squad was a holy knight, while the two priests were holy priests. Even though they were not job classes that focused on damage, it was nevertheless still a 1 versus 4 fight. Since Sword Demon was a job class with low HP, he could not afford to be too careless when dealing with them, either. Repeating Fireball. Flame-Singed Clothes seemed to have finally woken up from his stupor after collecting his nerves. Seeing that Brother Assist no longer had any advantage sprawled by his feet, he quickly tried to finish up the spell incantation. But before he could even unleash the spell, he suddenly felt someone pat him on his shoulder. Flame-Singed Clothes received a fright, and just as he was about to turn around, he felt his throat tighten, as the man behind him ruthlessly grabbed his neck. In the next moment, he saw the world spin and, feeling as if the man had ripped his throat out, before viciously planting him right onto the ground. Just who the heck? Forget it. I'm dead, anyway. Flame-Singed Clothes was already mentally broken at this point, so he did not have any fighting spirit left in him. He would have a chance to recover his self-confidence if he killed Brother Assist. Yet this sudden interruption quickly dashed every bit of hope left in him, and he gave up any sense of resistance at this moment. However, he was not dead. While this fall seemed vicious, Flame-Singed Clothes quickly realized that not much of his HP was reduced from this attack. But before he could closely ponder on this fact, someone forcefully kicked him right on the waist while he was down on the ground, which sent Flame-Singed Clothes tumbling to another side. He was still alive, but he had already been kicked off the battlefield. Flame-Singed Clothes was in tears. With Flame-Singed Clothes kicked out of the picture, the newcomer did not stop there. This man leaned and sprinted right over to where the four men were entangled with Sword Demon. Both his hands grabbed and clawed, finding purchase on the throats of the two priests to his left and right. Using the momentum from his sprint, the man tore and pressed on their throats, seizing both their throats as he sent them down to the ground. The knight was astonished by this turn of events and swiftly sent his sword slashing right down on this man's back. The man half crouched and half prone in response, as if he had eyes in the back of his head. This man proceeded to turn around, stood up and shot his hand out to clutch the knight's wrist. His elbow then pushed right onto the knight's chest as the man wrenched the same wrist, causing the sword he was holding to press against the knight's neck. The man finished his deed by tripping the knight while still maintaining the position of the sword by his neck upon landing. In the blink of an eye, this man had already pummeled 3 men to the ground. At this time, Glue, who had only just managed to get into position, was about to fire off his arrow at the newcomer, but the man very casually slapped the incoming projectile away with his palm. Glue quickly sought to turn around and flee, but soon discovered that Sword Demon had cut off his path of retreat. In mere seconds, the newcomer was already upon Glue. Unleashing a series of kicks and punches, he beat up the archer, who kept retreating with a recoil of each strike. The man ended that chain off with a hop, which transited into a jump kick, sending Glue flying away. From where Southern Lone Blade was standing, all he saw was his comrade disappearing right into the fog around them. The only one capable of displaying such a clean close combat skill was Eternal Dominion. The fighter had sent 5 players down to the ground in a heartbeat, yet not once did he finish these men off. Eternal Dominion admired his handiwork with satisfaction as he rubbed his hands together. "Where's that guy? He called me over here, yet he isn't around?" "He's busy," Sword Demon answered, gazing at the 5 men groaning on the ground. He was extremely surprised. The indomitability Eternal Dominion had just demonstrated looked to be about the same standard as Gufei. "Why are you here?" "Just passing through." "How coincidental!" Eternal Dominion exclaimed in delight, striding over to Southern Lone Blade as he answered. Southern Lone Blade had long since stopped chasing after young Master Han. Nobody had expected Eternal Dominion to suddenly make an appearance here. Just when his squad thought that the odds were stacked in their favor, it was easily wrestled against them without much of a fuss, leaving him the sole person still standing from his side. Nevertheless, that did not diminish his confusion over what Eternal Dominion had just said. "Looking for me? What do you need me for?" Southern Lone Blade was certain that they had barely interacted with each other, so while it would make sense if he was here to lend a hand to his friends, the way he had phrased it made it seem that he had come all the way here for him. "Is there bad blood between us? Did I loot equipment off his friend?" This was the only possibility Southern Lone Blade could think of. Eternal Dominion did not answer him and merely called out, "Don't you dare run away this time!" before he surged toward him like a meteor. Cyclone. Seeing that Eternal Dominion was about to close in on him, Southern Lone Blade suddenly lifted his arms out and unleashed his Cyclone. This was his last resort. Eternal Dominion quickly thrusted his palm out, utilizing the Shockwave Shield skill available to Qigong Masters. Cyclone connected, and Eternal Dominion staggered. Southern Lone Blade continued forward with his Cyclone, looking to cut Eternal Dominion into ribbons. In the end, he saw Eternal Dominion suddenly leap into the air, his leg reaching out to step onto a nearby tree branch and borrow its support to complete a second jump, allowing that foot of his to reach Southern Lone Blade's forehead. Swallow drop kick. It was a fighter skill as well, yet now that Eternal Dominion had gotten that extra jump in, he was able to use the skill from a higher position, which resulted in his foot cleaving right down onto Southern Lone Blade's unprotected head. Cyclone, which had been deemed as the skill with the strongest verdict by the game, was actually interrupted by this strike. Southern Lone Blade was dumbfounded as his Cyclone came to a halt. Landing on solid ground gracefully, Eternal Dominion's right hand reached out and struck Southern Lone Blade's shoulder while his left hand found its way to the latter's waist. That heavy body of a warrior was easily thrown up into the air, thanks to the utilization of the fighter skill, Seismic Toss. Eternal Dominion followed it up with a heavy punch, uppercut, thrusting kick, and spurring meteor. All the skills a fighter currently had access to were dumped in conjunction with Eternal Dominion's fist style at one go. Southern Lone Blade ate this entire chain while in the air, turning into white light before he even hit the ground.